Welcome back, everyone. This is your host, the DN WhatIf, here with another exciting fanfiction. Today, we're diving into the story of What If Deku Had a Bullshit Quirk? A special shout out to the original creator, Yojimbra. Please make sure to show your support by checking out their work from the description. If you enjoy this video, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more fanfiction content just like this. Now, let's get started with the fanfic. She could see all of Tokyo. From the bay to the mountains to every single building in between, she could see them all. Her old middle school was somewhere in all of that mess. The park where she practiced her magic, the shrine that she found herself drawn to, and if she had enough time, she might even be able to find her apartment. There was just one problem. As happy as she was that her newest spell could be considered a success, it was also a failure. A failure in that it wasn't so much a spell that let her fly, but, rather, one that just pushed her in one direction really far, and that direction she chose just so happened to be up. Once again, Izumi was reminded that gravity was not her friend. The view of Tokyo was breathtaking right up until the panic set in and she was sent plummeting towards the UA campus. Her teacher, classmates, and others were all scrambling around like ants down on the field they had been testing in. She couldn't believe it. After all that work, after all that training, after nearly getting crushed by a giant robot, this was how she was going to die, by going splat on her second day at UA. This was a bit on the anticlimactic side, all things considered. Okay, think there has to be something you can do to not go splat. That was what she wanted to say. She wanted to pretend that she was currently attempting to handle this situation in a level-headed manner. Instead, what she really said was, I don't want to die. I don't wanna. Help. All while flailing her arms and tumbling through the air as the ground got closer and closer with a dazzling amount of speed. I got you. XXXX. Izumi Midoriya, age 7. Glowing fingers. That was what her quirk was called. Whenever she brought her pointer and, index? No, the one next to the pointer, the middle one that her mom said was bad to show people, together it would create a light, and then she could draw with that light. Her quirk wasn't too bright, less bright than the nightlight that was in the bathroom, and maybe as bright as a star, but it was warm and comfortable, like a firelight that lingered in the air like a ribbon. When she was 6, she discovered that she could use her quirk when she held onto a stick or a pen. She could use anything that was long and slender to draw with her quirk. She could even use it with a spatula, but her mom got mad when she did that when she was helping her mom cook. Mostly because of the mess. Izumi loved her quirk. She loved to try and draw things in the air before the light started to fade and to make her mom smile with it. All of her friends thought it was a neat quirk. All of them except for one. He said her quirk was useless. And Izumi knew he was right. Stupid Kaken? She pawed at her eyes, trying to push the tears to the side just long enough so she could see where she was going. She really didn't know where. She had just ran away from Kaken deeper into the park where they were playing. She was way out of the area that her mom said she could play. He doesn't know what he's talking about. She wanted to be a hero. And she was going to be a hero. Even if all her quirk did was look pretty. They had played hero enough for Izumi to know that when it came to doing anything useful, her quirk didn't provide any options. Even if someone touched the light, nothing would happen. It was solid, it didn't burn, it wasn't even warm, it was just light. There had been plenty of heroes that had quirks that were light-based. Dr. Light could blind people and even make people glow with a touch, Lux could trap people in her light, and Laserface shot lasers out of her face. But all of them had light that was actually light or was special light. Dr. Light had regular light, he just had a lot of it, and could even make lasers if he wanted to. Lux had solid light, and Laserface had lasers. But Izumi's quirk was just a glow. She tried to make it brighter, she tried to make it solid, she tried to make it last long, but all it did was look pretty. It's not fair. She whined before she tripped on a branch and tumbled forward a bit. The scrape she got on her knee didn't hurt that much because she was already crying. She wasn't a crybaby either. Kaken's a mean, stupid jerk face. She grabbed a stick from the ground, her quirk activating and the glow flowed from the tip. Stupid. Swish, stupid. Swoosh, stupid. Swoop, stupid. Sha, stupid. Izumi opened her eyes, dropping the stick just in time for a nearby tree branch to fall to the ground with a loud snap. A sudden bout of tiredness hit her hard, making it feel like she hadn't eaten anything all day. Her head was spinning, and her limbs felt weak, but the shock of what just happened kept her from fainting. Floating in the air for a second was her quirk. A symbol that looked like a jagged arrow was floating there in blue light that was different from her usual soft pale yellow light. Instead of fading bit by bit like her quirk normally did, this symbol faded all at once. She looked around for anyone around her that might have caused this, but she was alone. Pushing herself off the ground with shaking hands, Izumi moved towards the branch that had fallen. The branch looked old and not exactly healthy compared to the other branches of the tree. There were a few green leaves towards the edges of the branch though, so it might not be dead. But it was the side of the branch that was supposed to be attached to the tree that caught Izumi's eye. The bottom part looked like it had been torn by its own weight, but the top part looked like it had just exploded or something. Did she do that? Was that her quirk? Was her quirk drawing stuff and then making stuff explode? That was amazing. How'd I do that? Can I do it again? I want to see it this time. Wait, the stick. Izumi ran all of 3 steps before the fatigue hit her again, but she ignored it and continued over to the stick she had grabbed. She took it in her hand again and watched as her quirk worked with it once more, a pale white light coming from its tip. Whoa, she swayed for a second before she stood, her feet firmly planted on the ground. How did it work? Do I just point at something? Could she make Kaken's stupid face explode? Wait, that was what villains do. Exploding someone's face was probably a terrible idea. And she didn't want to hurt the trees either. So, there was some water. Could she explode water? Did water explode? She watched All Might punch a tidal wave once and that water exploded. So yes, water exploded. Making her way down to the small creek that ran through this part of the park, Izumi took her glowing stick and began to wave it around, her quirk leaving a trail of light in the air that lingered. Nothing happened. She tried again, drawing something else. More nothing. Why isn't it working now? Work. She flailed her arm around drawing wide circles. Nothing happened. Just like always. Izumi pouted and stared at the stick for a few seconds. Was this even the right stick? Why did her quirk need a stick to work? Did other quirks need sticks to work? Did someone have a stick quirk? Focus. She slapped her cheeks like her dad did whenever he was trying to work from home, and looked at the stick again. It was just a stick, there wasn't anything special about it. So, why didn't her quirk make the water explode again? What if it was her drawing? How did it look again? It was kind of like an arrow, but not really, and a bit more jagged and like lightning bolt. Why? Maybe if she just tried to draw that again? Izumi took a breath, holding the stick out in front of her again and started to slash at the air like she had when she was screaming at Kaken in her head. The result was completely different from the drawing she saw. She tried again. And again. And again. And again. She even tried to get really mad at Kaken again while she drew, but still nothing happened. Izumi! She heard her mom call through the park. She sounded worried, which meant that when she found her she was going to be mad again. She might even get grounded again. One last chance. It had to be the drawing. She just had to do it right. With a careful hand, Izumi held the stick out in front of her. She tried to picture the drawing as clear as she could and closed her eyes. A swish, a swoosh, a swoop, and a sha. Izumi opened her eyes and felt her entire body grow numb. The drawing was blue this time. And this time she saw it. A blast of stuff shot out from the drawing and flew down into the water, causing it to splash like that time she and Kaken managed to push a big rock off a ledge into the water. That was awesome. That was so awesome. And why was she falling down? It felt like she couldn't even stand, her legs stopped working and her head just felt like it was floating on nothing. It was just like before, but even more weird. She didn't like this feeling. She started to fall and then stopped. Izumi! Her mom had her by the shoulders now, and was holding her up. Oh, thank goodness you're okay. What were you doing out here? What was that noise? Oh my goodness, you look like you're about to faint. What happened? Izumi could only smile as she pointed with her stick towards the water. I can be a hero, Mom. She was vaguely aware of her mom carrying her out of the park, the words her mom were saying, and the numbness of her body. It didn't matter why her body felt like this. Right now she was just happy. Nothing but happy. She could be a hero. Izumi Midoriya, age 12. Figuring out her quirk took a lot of time, effort, energy, and Izumi loved every single part of it. Sure, she was only able to practice it at most a few hours a day, in part because she was only allowed to use her quirk a few hours each day, and also because testing took a lot of energy, but that still didn't mean she couldn't devote all of her free thoughts towards figuring it out. That was why she made her spellbook. Sure, it was just a regular notebook that she just called a spellbook, but it still had everything she had learned about her quirk inside of it. Taking a sip of her drink, Izumi enjoyed the privacy of the rooftop spot she snuck into for her lunch. Here she could relax and just be herself without having to deal with all of her classmates bothering her, and what's more, she could even sneak in a bit of practice with her quirk. She grabbed her spellbook and smiled. Ever since she had figured out that her quirk could do more than just make pretty lights, they had changed the name of her quirk. Symbology. Izumi didn't really understand the name too much. She guessed it was because she drew symbols and then stuff happened, but wasn't ology supposed to be for like science and stuff? Like, rock science was geology, animal science was biology, and studying stars was astrology. But she guessed it made sense because she had to actually study her quirk to use it. Oh. Izumi flipped to the back of her spellbook for a small list she kept on the last page for possible hero names. Would Symbologist be a good hero name? She wrote the name down and put a bunch of question marks next to it. It was kind of silly to work on her hero name before she even got into middle school. But she wanted to have a good one for when she got into U.A. She was going to become a hero just like All Might and save everyone with a smile on her face. Only she wouldn't be 7 feet tall and have giant muscles. Unless she found a spell that did that. Maybe there was a transformation symbol she could figure out. Flipping to the front of her notebook, Izumi went over what she knew about her quirk. It was a bit like trying to learn a language from a single sentence, and sometimes randomly finding new words just by randomly drawing stuff. Each spell was made up of multiple parts that determined what it would do. The first spell she ever did was her magic bolt. It was made up of an impact, forward, and arrow symbols all placed in a specific order. She started to call these symbols runes, mostly because it was easier than calling everything a symbol. Besides, runes sounded more magical than symbols. She divided her runes into categories. Effect, which she only knew 2 of right now, impact and light. Direction, which she had 1, forward. Shape, which she had 3, arrow, ball, and ring. While light didn't do anything besides create a bright light, it was actually really useful because not only did it not take up much energy to use light spells, but they also didn't make things explode, which was super good for sneaking in some practice. Izumi placed her spellbook down carefully and flipped open to a page she had devoted towards developing new spells. Just last week she had discovered the light rune. So now she had lots of time to practice. She took 3 steps forward and held her pencil up in front of her. Her quirk activated, causing the end to glow briefly. While she could use her fingers well enough, there were benefits to using a wand, pencil, to practice with, finer control, smaller spells, and it was less draining. Probably because the bigger the surface she had to draw with, her fingertips were a lot thicker than a pencil tip, the more powerful the effect would be. Light, forward, arrow. In the bright noon sun it was hard to see, but the spell went off and a brief arrow light shot from her wand, flying off and quickly fading to nothing in the blink of an eye. Light, forward, ball. A sphere about the same size as a football emerged from her wand and then plodded along. The spell looked like a miniature sun made of a pure, simple white light that moved a few feet before it hit a fence and exploded in sparkling light. Now to try and develop something new. Developing a new effect would be risky on a school building, but direction and shape shouldn't be too problematic. Maybe What the hell are you doing up here, Deku? Izumi spun and felt her jaw clench as she saw Katsuki Bakugo and 2 of her old friends holding her spellbook. A pit formed in her stomach. Part of the reason why she ate lunch up here was specifically to avoid running into him. Her hands started to shake and she gripped her pencil tight. Kachin, she said firmly, the habit of calling him that name hadn't gone away. Put that down. Katsuki growled, holding her spellbook rough and glaring at her with red eyes. You're saying this is more important than me? Izumi bit her lip and shook her head. To me it is. She should have lied, she should have said anything else. But heroes don't lie. So this stupid notebook means more to you than your friends? Katsuki shook the notebook with one hand, bending the spine of it as he looked at her. His other hand was free, and was held in an upwards-facing claw that he liked to make whenever he was going to use his quirk. Then without it you'll start hanging out with us again. You're not my friends. Izumi took a step forward, arms straight down. You're just a big jerk. Oh, we're not. His hands sparked and he grabbed onto her book with a laugh. Then I guess I don't have any reason to not rip this to shreds. Years of notes were destroyed in seconds as her notebook went up in flames thanks to Katsuki's explosive quirk. He laughed, grabbing fistfuls of pages, tearing them out and setting them ablaze, sending the flaming ashes into the air. You jerk! The first punch she ever threw out of anger landed right on Katsuki's face. And the second and the third. After that, she was the one getting punched. Her face still hurt. When Katsuki and her had both got sent home, her mom had wasted no time in getting things started. Katsuki's mom had called a dozen times to apologize, and Katsuki had gotten a longer suspension than she had, but the damage had been done. So, after reviewing your daughter's case, Ms. Midoriya, and going over her grades, we've decided that the best place for her is at Haruno Jr. The bird-headed lady in a suit folded her feathered hands over her lap and tilted her beak to the side. Her voice was song-like and she was very colorful as well. We'll still need her to take the entrance exam, however, just to be sure. Oh, that's no problem at all, right, Izumi? Her mom asked, glancing over to her with a panicked smile that she had on all day. Thank you so much, Mrs. Paradise. Izumi just nodded. She really didn't want to transfer schools, mostly because she didn't understand why she had to go while Katsuki got to stay, but it wasn't like she had any friends at that old school because of Katsuki. Excellent. Now, at Haruno Jr. we do have a strict club enforcement, but thanks to our donors such as the Yayorozu, we have a wide range of clubs for you to choose from. Our girls' volleyball team actually went to the nationals last year as well. So, Izumi dear, what do you care about most? Before her mom could say something like drawing or anything else, Izumi said what she wanted. I want to be a hero. Somehow, despite her beak, Izumi could see the woman smiling. Oh, well, that's fantastic. We've had quite a few pro heroes pass through our doors in the past. I'm certain that you'll be on the way as well. So, I take it you'll want an athletic club then, maybe judo, or perhaps even track and field. Something to keep you active? Mrs. Paradise stood and clapped her feathered hands. Oh, I know, we're having a tour next Sunday for some of our future first years. Why don't you join in as well? I believe a few of the girls also wish to become heroes as well. Sure. The more Izumi was hearing about this school, the more she was actually looking forward to going there as well. Hello. I'm Nijire Hato, the bubbly third year that was going to be giving their tour, bounced around practically floating as she skipped around like a fairy. I'm a third year here at Haruno Jr. I'm going to be your tour guide today. I'm also going to be the captain of the swimming club once the school year starts, so I hope to see some of you there. Haruno High was a bit further away than her old school, and even further away than the middle school she would have normally gone to, making for a 40-minute trip to and from each day, but seeing the school when it wasn't raining made it feel worth it. The campus was huge too, with several buildings for classrooms, and even more for sports. All of the gardens tended to, and there was like no garbage too. It just felt so nice and clean looking. It was hard not to smile in a place like this. Plus the uniform was super cute too. It was a white sailor outfit with a pink ascot, and the skirt was blue as well, and it was fun to swish with. And it looked even cuter on her soon-to-be senpai, especially with how she bounced in it. So that's what a third year looked like. Alright. So, Nijire stuck her hand up in the air. We're going to have people buddy up. My senpai had us group up by birthday last time, but that's boring, so we're going to have everyone group up based on if I think you two look cute together. Somehow, likely through her quirk, Nijire was about to float as she zoomed around the group of 10 or so girls, pairing them up with each other. And you too. Izumi nearly collided with the tall black-haired girl that had almost crashed into her. She looked like the kind of girl that could be class president, tall, with long black hair, black eyes, and kind of smart-looking too. Ooh, sorry about that, the girl muttered, straightening out her uniform. I think our new senpai is a bit too excited. Yeah, but at least she's fun. Izumi smiled up at her new buddy. I'm Momo Yayarosa, by the way. The girl extended her hand towards Izumi. It felt like Izumi had heard that name somewhere before. I'm Izumi Midoriya, let's be friends, alright? Is it that easy to make friends? Momo asked, a look of shock coming over her face as she covered her mouth with one hand. Izumi just shrugged. I guess, I didn't really have any friends in middle school. She pointed towards her still black eye. Had bullies though. Oh, that's terrible, what did you do to get bullied? Momo asked with genuine concern coming over her face. I wanted to be a hero, Izumi said proudly. They were mad that I was practicing my quirk during lunch, I guess. Or, just Katsuki being a general asshole. That's a silly thing to bully someone over, but don't worry, I want to be a hero too. Momo said proudly, then her shoulders slumped just a bit, but I used to be homeschooled, so sorry if I'm not good at being a friend. You're already a great friend, Momo. Izumi could feel the smile pulling on her cheeks. Hey, why don't we make a promise? Let's both get into you today. Momo blinked, smiled, and then nodded. Sure, that sounds... Ga. They both looked over towards their senpai, Nijire, who was hovering a few inches off the ground looking at them with bright eyes. You two are so cute. I've decided you're my favorites. Come on. Let's start the tour. Oh, and tell me all about your quirks. In less than 20 minutes, Izumi was pretty sure that Nijire had asked her more about her quirk and herself than literally anyone else. Momo gave a light laugh and gave Izumi's arm a light nudge. I thought that we were supposed to be asking her questions, not the other way around. Izumi matched the laugh and flapped her arms as Nijire led them through the halls of the campus. They had already gone through most of the main buildings already, so only the science and sports buildings were left. Yeah, but it's kind of nice. I like talking about my quirk. Besides, she kind of answers everything before we can even ask the question. Yeah, Momo ran her hand through her hair and gave a light sigh that made Izumi feel like she was about to be either praised or scolded. She's asked me more than a few questions that I still haven't come up with answers for. Like your 3 sizes? Izumi gave a big smile and watched as Momo turned completely and utterly pink, just like she had when Nijire had first asked that question. She had also been asked that question, and she actually answered with a slight shrug. She had accepted that currently she was a bit behind some other girls her age, especially girls like Momo, and doubly especially girls like Nijire, but Nijire was 2 years older than her, so that made sense. Momo folded her arms over her chest, though the uniform didn't really give away too much information unless Momo stretched her back. Not you too. Hee hee, sorry, you're just cute when you blush. And that made Momo turn ever so slightly redder. Please don't tease me so much. Okay. Izumi placed both hands behind her head and watched as Nijire talked about all of the science rooms that they had at Haruno Jr., ranging from the astronomy club to the home EC club, and even the science club. A few of the club presidents showed up and talked about their clubs along the way, but none of them were especially interesting to Izumi. Hey, Nijire-senpai, I have a question. With the energy of an excited puppy tripping over its own feet, Nijire zoomed over in front of Izumi, nearly falling as she tried to come to a stop. You do? What about? Is there a quirk-related club? Or, maybe, a future hero club we could join? Nijire's eyes went wide and she leaned back. Her mouth was small and slightly open. Then she shrugged. Nope, not really, but there are lots of clubs here that you can join that can help you with your quirks and stuff. Like I had a senpai that was on the swim team that wanted to learn to use her quirk underwater, and we all helped her with that. I joined the swim club partially because I like swimsuits and stuff, but also because it helped me with my quirk. Oh wait, hey Momo? And just like that, Izumi had lost Nijire's interest. Momo gave a light yelp when Nijire appeared in her face. You said that your quirk uses your fat, right? Nijire pointed towards Momo's stomach, which prompted the black-haired girl to place her arms over her stomach. Yes? Momo shrunk under Nijire's intense stare. If that's true, why don't you put on some weight? That way, you'd be able to use your quirk more? Besides, if you're too big, you can just make a car and be ready for summer. Or did you not explain your quirk properly the first time? Once again, Nijire was floating a few inches off the ground. Her foot occasionally touched the ground, only for her to spring back up like she was trying to stand in water that was just slightly too deep. Oh, well, while the fat that's stored in my body is theoretically usable, it's actually slower than using the fat that my body is currently breaking down from my meals. And less efficient? The blush currently staining Momo's cheeks remained as she shuffled her feet. Besides, I like being, slender. Oh, that's so neat. And you? Nijire's interest had been gained without Izumi doing anything. What's it like when you use your quirk? It's super neat how you can make it do stuff. It's like Momo can make anything that she knows about, and you can do the same thing but not with stuff, but with stuff. Nijire touched the ground and blinked for a moment. Does that make sense? Izumi opened her mouth and stared at the curious blue-haired girl that she had been stuck with for an hour now and then towards Momo, who was also looking at her curiously. Well, when I complete an she felt her cheeks burn. This was her first time calling her spells in front of other people. That was just what she called them in her head for the most part. Spell, a pause, no one cared that she called them spells. Neat. When I complete a spell, I feel like I have less energy, and if I use it too much, then I get kind of lightheaded and stuff and moving is pretty hard and… Nijire grabbed her hands and clapped them in front of Izumi's face. Your quirk's just like mine. Yeah, it's like that feeling that you get when you're all fine, and then you run around and do stuff, and then your body remembers you didn't eat, and you just feel like really terrible, you're tired but awake, and it's like your head is swimming in a fishbowl filled with angry goldfish? Izumi could only process about half of what Nijire was saying as her words came out at speeds that made Izumi feel like someone had pressed fast forward on Nijire. Yeah, that's what it feels like when I use my quirk too much. It takes up my stamina, and when I was first in middle school, I couldn't even do anything without feeling super tired, and sometimes I'd even pass out if I used my quirk too much. Then I had a senpai say I should join the swim team to increase my stamina, and it worked, and now look. Nijire darted back, floating in the air again and wobbling slightly. I can almost fly with my quirk, and I'm not really tired. You should join the swim team. I'd love to have you as my super cute kohai. Izumi blinked, but I'm not a good swimmer. That's fine. Sucking at stuff is the first step towards being good at something. And besides, you want to increase your stamina so you can use your quirk more, right? You want to be a hero too, right? So why not? This will help you a lot. Plus, you get to wear a cute swimsuit and look. Nijire pulled up her skirt and pointed towards her thighs, making Momo blush and look away. When you swim a lot, your thighs look really nice. And your butt gets firm too. Plus, it works out your whole body. It's great. Honestly, there wasn't a lot that Izumi could disagree with there. All of those things sounded amazing, and being a hero was a physically demanding job. She shrugged and looked towards Momo. Well, what do you say, Momo, want to join the swim team with me? Oh. Nijire grabbed Momo's hands and looked at the girl with sparkles in her eyes. Yes, please. I bet you'd look super cute in a swimsuit. Especially if you had a ponytail. Nijire gasped and shot her arms up in celebration. We should all get ponytails. But Momo gave a light shrug. Outside of general fitness, I'm not sure what swimming would do for me. If your boobs grow more, it'll help your back muscles out, Nijire replied like that had just sweetened the deal a lot. I suppose? Momo offered a shrug. I'd like to see the other options before I decide. But it sounds like the swim club would be ideal for you, Izumi. Nijire grabbed both their hands again and pulled them along. Great. Come on, let me go show you the pool first. That'll convince you. Then we can go to the other clubs. Honestly, Izumi did feel a little bad for the others that Nijire had locked onto her and Momo so far. But at the same time, she was a little jealous of the others that weren't the center of attention. The indoor pool of Haruno Junior High was massive, with a set of stands on one side and an enormous wall of windows that made the room feel like it was both indoor and outdoor. There was even a 2-story diving platform on one end, and some other equipment scattered around the pool. Welcome to the pool. The only downside is that it sucks when we have to clean it, but we only have to do that once a year, and we play music and have a barbecue afterwards. The rest of the time, we're doing laps, swimming to improve our time and forms, sometimes we even practice with water polo, and that's super fun. Nijire spun around as she gestured towards the pool, a great big smile on her face. Then she let out a pout and crossed her arms. I'd show you our school swimsuits because they're super cute and stuff, but I was told I wasn't allowed to do that. Oh, and the pool's heated too. Nijire flopped her arms and then looked towards the pool. Sorry, it's kind of boring when we can't actually get in it. It's fine, Nijire. Izumi smiled and waved her hand. But I think I might join. It sounds like a lot of fun. Alright, now, we need to find a club for Momo, and Nijire looked behind them at the rest of Izumi's future classmates. And the rest of you? Anyone want to join the swimming team? Nobody even responded. Most of the other girls had expressed interest in the less physical clubs already. Izumi? Momo asked softly once Nijire's tour had come to an end. The blue-haired girl had waved everyone goodbye and floated off into the main building, leaving the tour group to find their own way home, much like how they found their own way there. Momo folded her hands in front of her skirt and bit her lips slightly. Seeing as how Nijire-senpai had hijacked our conversations, I didn't get the chance to ask. Would you like to come to lunch with me today? I know of a good place nearby, and afterwards, we could even shop for supplies. Izumi winced. She did want to go, but her cash was limited to just enough to buy a drink from a vending machine if she really wanted. Sorry Momo, but I don't have any money on me. Oh, Momo's shoulders slumped, but then she blinked and smiled. Oh, I know. I can pay for our meal. And if we go shopping for supplies, please consider it a token of our new friendship. Are you sure? Izumi asked, scratching the back of her head. I mean, if you're paying for everything, I think I'd start to feel guilty. You shouldn't, Momo said firmly. I'm the one offering to pay, so please? Would you join me? Fine. But I'm going to pay you back somehow. The ever so slightly long trip to her school was worth it. There were so many girls here. And they all looked really friendly. And the uniform was super cute too. Izumi let out a little spin watching as her skirt flared out a bit before falling back down. Sure, her old school had a skirt too, but it was less, what was the word? Floofy? Than the skirt of Haruno Jr. There was even a version that had pants if she wanted it. Or shorts for the summer. Izumi watched as a group of friends stopped right before the main gate and paused, linking arms before all jumping over and laughing as they made their way to their own classes. The foot-wide section that was where the gate rested once it was closed was a different color than the rest of the sidewalk, and even the ground just inside the campus. Izumi smiled and sucked on her lip before she hopped over into her new school. It felt amazing. She finally had a reason to be excited about school. She had a friend that she wanted to hang out with, a senpai that was going to drag her to do things, and a club that she wanted to join. She didn't have to worry about Katsuki either. Here she could do what she wanted and no one could. Excuse me, a tall teacher with long green hair that was a lot more blue than Izumi's own pointed towards the building. Her face was neutral, but kind of pretty. She had on a professional-looking suit, though her tights were in a floral pattern that showed off hints of her thighs. Even the sensei here were super pretty. You're standing in the way of the other students. Hurry to class before you're late. Oh, okay, so maybe she'd have to listen to the teachers a lot. Yes, Mime-sensei. I'll be on my way. Thank you. She accidentally laughed as she made a quick sprint towards the main building. Class 1B, located on the third floor of the largest building on the campus. She knew about where its location was thanks to Nijire's in-depth tour. Really, Izumi didn't have much concern over where she sat in the room. A window would be nice. Then she could pretend that she was an anime protagonist. But really the only thing she wanted was to be in the same classroom as Momo. Izumi! Nijire-senpai! Izumi spun and saw her soon-to-be captain skipping towards her, her feet taking ever so slightly too long to hit the ground. It was a bit like watching a deer sprowing around in some tall grass, but instead of grass, it was students. Nijire pulled Izumi into a hug without even a second thought. So did you decide what club to join? Club day is officially tomorrow, but we can get you to join today if you want. Nijire leaned in and whispered in Izumi's ear. I heard that we were even going to get new swimsuits too. Oh. And what class are you in? And did you learn anything else about your tricky quirk? In order? Izumi asked. Yes. Nijire nodded with enough force that it made her hair bounce. I'm going to join the swim club. Yay. I'm in class 1B. Oh, that's Ms. Byleth's class. She's really pretty and kind of strict, but she's also really nice, and she'll even fight you if you ask her nice enough. She's really strong too. She's even the fencing coach. I think she used to be a hero until she decided to start teaching. Hey wait, your hair is? No relation. Doll. Your quirk. Izumi scratched the back of her head and laughed. I haven't really found anything new out yet. It's kind of really slow. It's super tricky, I bet. Nijire gave a slight pout and nodded. Well, if you ever want help I can try and do my best. Then I can be your senpai at UA too. I'm going to be your super senpai. Nijire bounced back and waved goodbye. I gotta go tell Kuro-sensei that we have a new member for the swim club already. Oh, and actually go to class. See you later, Izumi. Izumi waved goodbye and watched as Nijire sproinged through the sea of students with far more grace than what should be allowed. Once more Izumi turned to look at the stairs that would lead her to her new classroom. With the third years on the first floor, and the second years on the second floor, it only made sense for the first years to be on the third floor, which made things a bit confusing because rooms were numbered for the grade they taught and not the floor they were on. But once she got used to it, everything would be fine. Izumi walked past a few more students and for her classroom, second from the right, the doors were open and there were a lot of girls talking in random clumps and laughing about something or another. A few were sitting alone at their desks. Like Momo. Momo. Izumi bounced over towards her first real friend for the first time in a long time. We're in the same class. Momo looked up from her desk and smiled. I know, I checked the class listings downstairs. Oh, but that would have ruined the surprise. Izumi braced herself on Momo's desk, squatting down slightly so that they were both at eye level. She gave Momo the brightest smile she could, and watched as the girl fidgeted and tried to return the smile. But I'm really happy we're in the same class. I'm happy too. I'm really happy I can spend more time with you, Izumi. And, I got a gift for you. Well, it's more a gift for me so that we can talk more, but, yeah, I wanted to hang out with you but we didn't have any way to talk and you said that your apartment has internet, so, here. Momo pulled out a small box that could easily fit into the palm of her hand. It was tied with a green ribbon. So we can talk more? Momo, you didn't have to. I still haven't paid you back for that lunch. Not to mention the shirt Momo had bought her just because she said it was cute. Still, despite her words, Izumi took the gift and opened it ever so slightly. She instantly closed it and forced it back into Momo's hands. Are you nuts? Aren't those like really expensive? Not especially. Momo shrugged slightly, her cheeks tinged a light red. Yes, she should feel shame over this. Besides, it's my old one, so it should be fine, right? Momo pushed the gift back towards Izumi and smiled sweetly. Please, it'll be a way for us to talk when we're at home. But they just met a couple weeks ago. Sure, they had spent a lot of time hanging out during the break, but wasn't this a bit rushed? Are you sure? She wasn't quite comfortable with this. With a light hair tuck that just seemed to be that kind of effortlessly pretty thing that Momo could do, she nodded. Please, I wouldn't be giving it to you if I didn't want to. Well, okay then. She picked up the gift and smiled at its weight. She never had an iPod before. But I think my mom was talking about getting me a computer for school now, so we could have talked then. Still, please consider it a gift and… All right, girl, a firm but stoic voice tore through the classrooms. It was the woman that had talked to her at the gates. The pretty one with dark bluish-green hair. Please take your seats so we can get the first day underway. I am Ms. Byleth, your homeroom teacher. Izumi took her seat, one back and to the side from Momo, the expensive iPod sitting in her shirt pocket, just above her heart. With her homeroom teacher being a former pro hero, Izumi found herself much more willing to pay much more attention. It helped that Byleth-sensei appeared to be prone to tangents and talking about her time as a hero. It was so awesome. XXXX. Izumi. Nijire flew over the still pool, causing waves to form thanks to her quirk. Her long sky blue hair had somehow been reduced to a tight bun at the back of her head, which likely had enough density to cause some kind of effusion. Izumi found herself being used as a brake as Nijire grabbed onto her and spun them both around ever so slightly, briefly laughing. "You came. You're the first person to say you'd come and actually came. I'm so happy now." Nijire's feet touched the ground, leaving Izumi to wonder what on earth just happened. Most of the other ones never showed up, even when I say they're super cute and stuff. It's kind of annoying. But oh, come on, we're just about to get changed. Did you bring a swimsuit? We probably have a spare that's your size if you don't. Was the room supposed to be spinning? Izumi shook her head and refocused on the room. As soon as she had said her goodbyes to Momo, who was going to explore more clubs before making her choice, Izumi had headed towards the pool to officially join the swim club. "Yep, I'm here to join the swim club." Was that even one of the questions that Nijire had asked? The answer to that question would eventually be yes, given how Nijire seemed to be able to find a question for everything. "I can't wait to see how cute you look in our swimsuits. Oh, let me introduce you to everyone. Come on." Nijire zoomed halfway across the pool before she came to an abrupt stop and turned around. "Oh wait, you can't zoom, can you?" Izumi just shrugged. "Not yet, but maybe I'll be able to learn a spell for that." Nijire made a noise that could only be described as excited. "Your quirk's so cool, Izumi. Especially since you call it spells. I just call mine wave energy, but maybe I should call it like ki or something even cuter. Why not fairy beams?" Nijire gasped, hands covering her mouth as she bounced up nearly a foot. Was it normal to use a quirk that much? Or was Nijire just one of those types that had problems controlling her quirks when excited? Then again, she was using it to fly. Maybe she was just so cute that no one bothered with telling her otherwise. "That's perfect." Okay, but come on, I can have you meet Kuro-sensei and your senpais that are my kuhais, our kupais." Izumi was partially dragged around the pool towards where several other students were sitting. Some of them were in Nijire's class, while there were a few second years as well, but currently, it seemed that Izumi was the only first year at the moment. Kuro-sensei was actually rather tall and had light purple hair that was almost as long as Nijire's. She had a pleasant smile, and was busty. Bila-sensei was busty. Are all the sensei here busty? Was that important? Not really. Did it bother her? Not really, she kind of liked it. But the most important thing about Kuro-sensei, besides the fact that she had fox ears and a large fluffy pink-purple tail, was that she was wearing a one-piece swimsuit and that she had thighs. A lot of thigh. If that was what a swimmer's body looked like, then Izumi was even more excited to join the swim club and get started. "Oh my." Kuro-sensei placed a hand to her cheek and sounded exactly how Izumi would have pictured an older sister to sound. "You must be the Izumi Nijire has told us all about. Are you here to join our club?" "Yes." Izumi stood straight and then gave a slight bow. "I'm Izumi Midoriya. May I please join your club?" Kuro-sensei clapped and smiled. "Of course, our club is open to all, but I don't suppose Nijire asked you how much experience you have with swimming?" She was interesting. Nijire pouted, flailing her arms about. How could I ask her something like that when she has a quirk that's all like whoosh and sparkle? And she'd look cute in a swimsuit anyways. Somehow Izumi was pretty sure that every one of the club members rolled their eyes at Nijire. I had swimming lessons when I was 8, sensei." She bowed again. "So you know how to play in the water, but not how to actually swim?" Kuro-sensei clapped again, a smile on her face. "That's an excellent start. We can get you in the water today if you're interested." "Yes." "Alright, Nijire, please take Izumi too." "On it, sensei. I'll make sure she's even cuter than she already is." Oh my. In a whirl of lockers, clothing and numerous swimsuits thrown her way, Izumi found herself dressed in the school swimsuit for the first time. It was all black, with a red line that went from her neck, darted right, and ended at her hip. It was tight, but comfortable, and compared to Nijire reminded her that she was by most metrics still a girl and that everything she currently lacked Nijire already had. "Huh." Nijire muttered, putting her own swimsuit on. "Did they get bigger again?" Izumi placed her hands on her chest and pouted just a bit. She wanted to say those words one day. The scent of dinner cooking greeted Izumi the moment she entered her apartment. Normally she'd be bothering her mom about what she was cooking, sampling the wares, and even helping out a bit, but every single part of her body was screaming at her to go lay down and not move for a solid 20 or so minutes. When she had been told that swimming was a full-bodied workout, she hadn't been made aware of just how much of a workout that entailed. The first few days had been pretty all-right, mostly getting comfortable in the water, watching Nijire and Kuro-sensei demonstrate various strokes and swimming techniques, and then learning those techniques herself. Sure, she had felt tired after those days too, but it wasn't that bad. Today was hell. It was what Kuro-sensei had referred to as an endurance day, which basically meant swim until someone said stop. Izumi wasn't sure how many laps she did. She stopped counting when she got past 100. She fell onto the couch with a solid oof, her bag sliding along beside her. Maybe it was called the breaststroke because it would make her breasts bigger? That would explain Kuro-sensei's chest. Izumi muttered and reached for the iPod Momo had given her. It was surprisingly useful. So long as there was Wi-Fi, which most of her school had, she could message Momo and Nijire, listen to internet radio, and Google random stuff. She even downloaded a couple games. Offline she could use it for a lot of things too, but so far it was like having a computer in her pocket. Google, does the breaststroke? Google autofill, does the breaststroke build muscle? Does the breaststroke tone your stomach? Does the breaststroke increase your bust size? Does the breaststroke make you... They're the third one. Health benefits of the breaststroke, blah blah blah, tones arms, legs, stomachs, increases lung capacity and works out the heart, increases endurance and stamina. Oh, so that's why Nijire liked it so much. Would I act like her if I did 1,000 laps a day? Izumi flopped onto her back and stared intently at her iPod. Well, if she didn't believe Nijire and everyone else on the benefits of swimming, then she sure did now. Oh, breasts, she muttered, staring at her phone. Firms and Shapins. That was good. Oh, did the same with her butt. She wanted to be one of the really pretty heroes. Like Ryukyu. Or that new hero that everyone was talking about. Naruko. She was awesome. Izumi. Her mother said in a quiet tone. Izumi looked up and saw her mother looking at her with a confused look. Was she in trouble? Did she forget something again? Or maybe she was worried about school or something. What's up, Mom? Where did you get? Inko pointed right at her iPod. That was the kind of that had a bit of a weight to it. Huh. She looked at her iPod for a few moments and then looked back up at her mother. This? Yes. Oh, well, Momo gave it to me. Izumi sat up to look her mom better in the eyes. Inko raised an eyebrow. For free? Yeah, Izumi looked at the iPod again. She said it was her old one and that she wanted to talk to me. Her mother let out a long heavy sigh and gave a light frown. You're not using Momo, are you? I mean for her money, dear. She spoils you. The first day she met you she bought you dinner and a couple of shirts, and now she's given you something so expensive? Her mother pushed her legs off the couch and sat down next to Izumi with a light huff. It sounds to me like she's trying to buy your friendship. Izumi wanted to protest, but it was hard to, especially with how each memory of Momo trying to buy her something popping into her head like a bag of popcorn. It wasn't just the shirt or the iPod, it was at lunch too. Momo would always offer Izumi something from the vending machine. At first Izumi thought that it was just Momo trying to be nice, which Momo was. But, was what her mom saying true? But Momo's my friend. I know, sweetie, I know, but let her know that even if she isn't buying you expensive things. Her mom grabbed the iPod for a few moments before handing it back. You're still her friend, and ask her if that was really used, alright? Izumi blinked and frowned. Should she wait until tomorrow or message Momo now? Maybe she should ask Nijire-senpai for advice? Even if Nijire talked a lot, it wasn't like she gossiped. Well, she did, but she never spread gossip, or at least Izumi hadn't seen her do that. Was it okay to do it at school? They'd have to find someplace private. Would that be okay? Izumi stared at the messenger screen for a long time. So far her only friends were Momo, Nijire, and some swim club members that were in a group chat that Nijire had forced her to join. The only one that actually messaged her directly was the white-haired spy, though that was a short-lived conversation consisting of a hello and a hi. A message from Momo appeared on her phone. Momo, would you like to have lunch with me on the roof tomorrow? Perfect. Izumi, That sounds like a lot of fun. Momo, excellent. I'll bring a bento box for both of us. What? That was the opposite. Izumi, wait, what if we both make a bento box and then share? Momo, are you certain? Izumi, yes. It sounds like fun, right? Momo, I agree. That sounds like a great time. I'm looking forward to your meal. Mom. Izumi climbed over the back of the couch and headed towards the kitchen. I need to make a bento box to share with Momo tomorrow. XXXX. If Izumi's bento box was the equivalent of a one-bedroom apartment, Momo's bento box was a 3-story townhouse that had a yard and a pool. I thought you weren't going to bring me one. Izumi let her mouth drop as she looked at the bento box that looked like it was large enough to feed her and her mother for dinner. Momo bit her lip and stared at her box and then looked towards Izumi's. Well, when you said you wanted to share, I might have gone a bit overboard, and Momo blushed and held up a fancy-looking thermos. Tea? Well, so much for beating around the bush. Izumi sighed and sat down next to Momo, and stared out across the virtual garden that was on top of Haruno Jr. There were planter boxes everywhere and even a few trees maintained by the bonsai club. It really was a beautiful place. It was almost like a date. Momo, why do you keep buying me stuff? Oh, how did you find out that iPod was new? It's new? Izumi stood up and grabbed at her messy, unkempt hair. What? Why? I'm sorry, but I just really wanted to talk to you more, and Momo bit her lip, trailing off. This isn't how I thought today would go. I'm sorry, Izumi, Momo stood to leave, her face was downward. Izumi wanted to scream. She flailed her arms and then ran towards Momo. She accidentally pushed her against the wall, tripping over her still mildly jello legs. She caught herself by slamming her hand against the wall right next to Momo's head. Momo looked at her with wide, slightly teary eyes, hands clutched over her chest. Izumi? Pinning a girl that was taller than her was more than a little weird, but it didn't matter. She was going to deal with this now. Momo. Deep. Momo covered her mouth and stared at Izumi with quivering eyes. Look, I'm not sure what's going on, but if you feel like you need to buy me stuff to get me to like you, then stop. Izumi closed her eyes, hoping that she could find the right thing to say inside her eyelids. I mean, the stuff is nice and all, but it feels weird. I think we need to become better friends before you start buying me stuff, not the other way around. She winced. What the hell was she saying? Or something? She opened her eyes and saw Momo still standing against the wall, hands over her mouth. Her eyes were wide and filled with tears. Izumi! Momo fell forward, wrapping her arms around Izumi and placing her weight against her, which, naturally, Izumi's complete and utter fatigue from swim practice yesterday caused both of them to fall to the ground. I'm sorry. I didn't know what to do. Izumi flailed her leg for a moment but stopped and just embraced Momo's awkward hug. Do with what? Momo sniffled for a moment. I just really liked you, and I thought that if I bought you stuff, then maybe you'd like me too, so I'm sorry, I'm not really good at any of this. A smile pulled on Izumi's lips as she patted Momo's back. Hey, I like you too, so don't worry about it, and I mean, the only other friends I've had destroyed my stuff, and aren't my friends anymore, so as far as I'm concerned you're, like, the best friend ever. I am? Momo sat up, wiping away a few red-eyed tears. You are? Izumi let that smile win and propped herself up. So, let's do stuff that doesn't involve a lot of money, alright? Oh, Momo's shoulders slumped. Okay, I can try, but, what would that involve? Izumi shrugged. We can have a sleepover, talk about boys, and watch a bunch of movies and stuff. Do we have to talk about boys? Momo stood and extended a hand towards Izumi. Nope. That's the best part about a sleepover. You can do whatever it is that you want. Izumi took the offered hand and found herself hoisted up easily. We can even just listen to terrible music, or try gross food, or have a pillow fight, or, I don't know, stuff. Momo laughed, a few tears almost spoiling her smile. That sounds delightful. Would you like to have a sleepover this weekend? Sure. And can we comb your hair? Momo asked with a lopsided smile. Why? Because it's messy and it's been bugging me for a long time. My mom says it eats combs. Momo pulled a comb out of her arm and smiled. I got a supply. Alright, sure, we'll have a sleepover and you can comb my hair. Much like how Momo's bento box outclassed Izumi's bento box on multiple levels, Momo's house completely outclassed every single part of Izumi's entire apartment complex. By a lot. She kind of figured that Momo's family was well off, just like how Katsuki's family was well off. She was expecting a nice-looking townhouse, maybe with 1 or 2 floors, a big yard, and like a car. Or maybe one of those condo places in one of those super tall buildings. But nope. Momo's house felt like something Izumi would be ice-guyed into living in if Katsuki had actually pushed her in front of a bus. A massive fence stretched for as far as Izumi could see on either side of the street, and the tree line was so thick that Izumi couldn't even see Momo's house. The only hint of it was the driveway leading into what might as well have been a forest tended by fairy creatures. Izumi blinked and felt 2 questions well up in her mind. The first was an inner question, the kind of thing that her mouth would blurt out if it wasn't busy being opened in awe. Why the hell did they walk here? The second she actually managed to ask. You live here? Of course. Momo gave her a cheerful smile that put Izumi to ease. When it came to this sleepover, Momo was excited enough for both of them, which only made Izumi all the more excited, though she was dreading that about half the sleepover was going to be about combing her hair. When she told her mother what they wanted to do at the sleepover, she just laughed and told her good luck. Izumi touched her hair for a moment. Was it really that bad? Sure, it technically wasn't combable, but it was still hair. She could get it cut. Kinda. Momo pressed a button on an intercom that rested just to the side of the gate and spoke softly. Hello, it's me, Momo. I'm here with my friend. Young mistress, I'm glad you returned safely. Shall I send someone with? Oh, no thanks, we'll walk, Momo said politely and then turned to smile at Izumi yet again. Of course Momo would have a butler. Of course they would call her mistress. Suddenly the whole homeschooling thing and Momo trying to buy her friendship thing made a lot more sense. And the guilt Izumi felt from still using that iPod just kind of vanished. Well, mostly. The driveway was shorter than Izumi would have thought, in part because she kind of imagined Momo taking her up a long mountain trail to some super secret castle where she would meet some long-forgotten hero that taught all might and then she'd become his student because she had potential, but that was just the stuff that existed in comic books. Instead, she found herself staring at a house that was so big that she had to judge the size of rooms based on the size of her entire apartment. Lobby? 3 apartments and 2 more on top. It had stairs. Kitchen? 1.5 apartments. Dining room? 2 apartments. Bathroom? Half an apartment. Momo's bedroom? 1 apartment, with Momo's bed taking up nearly as much space as Izumi's entire room. Momo's closet? Half an apartment. Can I jump on your bed? Was the first thing that Izumi had asked after looking around Momo's room. Huh? Momo asked, confused, like the idea of jumping on a bed had never even occurred to her, which, honestly, didn't really surprise Izumi too much. Momo was a bit strange like that, but strange in a good way that made Izumi laugh. Sure? Yay. Izumi tossed her bag onto the couch in Momo's room and charged towards the bed. She jumped, belly flopped, and then sunk into the softest bed she had ever touched. Instantly it felt like sleep was wrapping itself up around her. Oh my god, your bed is so comfy. The bed shook, and Izumi found herself staring at Momo as the other girl had launched herself onto the bed just like she had. Oh, so that's why you asked. Izumi smiled and flopped onto her back, staring up at the canopy thing that was on top of Momo's bed. I'm so jealous you get to sleep here like every night. She sat up and looked around the room. Speaking of which, where am I going to sleep? It'd be kind of boring if I slept in a guest room. Oh. Momo sat up, a slight smile on her face as she pushed some of her hair out of her face and looked towards her computer. I actually did some research after we talked. Of course she did. I can have a guest room prepared for you if you'd like, or we can both sleep on the ground, or you can take the couch, or we could go and camp in the yard somewhere. By yard, Momo meant the Yaoyorozu National Forest. Or we can sleep in my bed. Together? Izumi asked like there was something else Momo could be implying. Momo nodded. Yep, I'm told it's more common for girls to do than boys, but either way, it's fine. Besides, Momo patted her massive bed and bit her lips slightly before a smile grew on her face. It's big enough for both of us, right? But what if I flail around in my sleep and punch you or something? Momo shrugged. Do you do that? And it's not like we'll be sleeping right next to each other. Fine. Izumi flopped back down and smiled up at the ceiling. We'll sleep in the same bed, but I'm holding you responsible for anything weird that happens. Weird? Izumi just shrugged. So, what do you want to do first? The comb being wagged in front of her face filled Izumi with a light sense of dread. XXXX. The first comb that Momo had attempted to use on Izumi had put up an admirable fight before it had simply submitted to her hair. But Momo was not discouraged. Instead, she brought out the big guns. The big, heavy, gigantic guns of chemical warfare. So, you've never gone to a salon? Momo asked, her hands deep into Izumi's hair, nearly reaching the parts of her scalp where the sun didn't even reach. The fact that Momo's house had a salon chair just sitting in one of their bathrooms shouldn't have surprised Izumi as much as it did. But here she was, wrapped in a towel after taking a relaxing bath with Momo. Her wet hair was more agreeable, but Momo wanted to tame that beast once and for all. Like it all? Nope. Not even for a haircut? Most of my haircuts happened in our kitchen. Momo made a confused noise, probably coming to terms with the fact that people had their haircuts in the kitchens. Wait until she finds out that they eat there too. Is that why your hair is so, damaged? It's almost like parts of it were burnt noodles. Izumi opened her mouth and thought about Katsuki's favorite way to pick on her. Explosive noogies. She probably should have punched him a lot harder. Maybe he was why her hair was so messy? Remember those not-so-nice friends? Oh, I'm so sorry. The sincerity in Momo's voice put a smile on Izumi's face. Momo's head appeared from behind her, and she smiled at her through the mirror. With her hair down, Momo looked really mature, almost like she should be her senpai. But don't worry. Momo grabbed an expensive-looking bottle of stuff, and her smile grew again. I'm going to make sure that your hair is going to be healthy, beautiful, and loved. Izumi could only watch as Momo dumped a healthy glob of the honey-like goo on top of Izumi's still wet hair, her fingers diving in deep again, making Izumi's eyes roll at the sensation. The rubbing was delightful enough that she could easily ignore that the shampoo stuff Momo had put onto her hair smelled far more expensive than it should have. I'm going to lean you back now so we can wash your hair better, alright? Momo didn't wait for her to respond before the chair leaned back, and Izumi was spun towards the small water basin that stuck out of the wall. Are you sure you know what you're doing? Yep. My mom's stylist taught me a... Momo let out a light shriek as the small hose squirted her in the face. She lets me help, but I don't think I can mess your hair up more than it already is. Is it that bad? Momo looked her in the eyes, sucking on her bottom lip. Yes. I'm in your capable hands then. Warm water, cold water, shampoo, conditioner, rinsing, combing, drying, and washing again. It felt like Momo was trying to cook some kind of hair-based pasta. So, Izumi smiled and let her mind wander. Have you thought about what kind of a hero you want to be? Type. Momo asked, confused, like general, crime, rescue, or specialist? No, I mean like your hero name. And your costume. And like who you'd want to intern with. Izumi leaned back slightly to look up towards Momo, who was way too engrossed with her hair. I want to intern with someone like Ryukyu. Oh, I see. Well, the reason why I want to be a hero is kind of because of All Might, but I don't think he takes interns, so I'm not really sure. I mean, I'd like to go for one of the better female heroes, like Suzu Samurai, or even Mrs. Joke, but I think they're both going to become teachers next year. But, as for my hero name, I've actually been thinking about calling myself Creati. Creati? Momo nodded. Yeah, well, my quirk is called Creation, and I just thought that if I call myself Creati, it'd show off what I can do. Which will hopefully be to create whatever it is I need to save people. Oh wow. That's so awesome. What about your costume? What do you want to look like? Well, I need to expose my skin to use my quirk, so, I hope to have something that's still a bit on the modest side despite that, but, yeah. Oh, are you going to have a boob window? Izumi flailed her hands in the air like she was somehow describing what she was talking about. Only, like it'd go all the way down to your stomach. You could just wear a bikini or… No. Fine. Well, what about you? Do you have a name? Izumi twisted her lips and let out a long sigh. I'm not really sure. I mean, my quirk basically lets me make spells and stuff, but I'm not really sure. I had a list, but then that list kinda got destroyed. Oh, well, if you're going to be a wizard or a witch. She poked Momo on the nose. I'm not a witch. Well, if you're a wizard then, why not go with something like Merlin? Momo offered with a pleasant smile. He was the wizard in the legend of King Arthur and is someone that everyone knows about. Izumi blinked. Merlin. She tasted the word on her lips, felt it with her tongue, and heard it in her mind. A smile spread across her face. That's perfect, Momo. I'll be Merlin, the wizard hero. Great, we can make your hero costume be a robe. And with a big hat. Oh, and we can give you a big bushy beard. Yeah. Their laughter echoed throughout the bathroom. With her hair thoroughly washed and then softly dried by Momo's hands, Izumi felt better than she had in a long time. Bit by bit, her untamed, frizzy, nearly wild hair had been transformed. The still damp tangles fought against Momo's fine combs, but they didn't have the strength they once had. The tangles, the split ends, the knots and the frazzle were all worked out. Eventually, it started to resemble her mother's, a bit shorter, but straight, silky, and smooth. With a light hand, Izumi ran her fingers through her hair for the first time in years. It felt so good to be able to do that. Her hair, it felt light, it felt right. Her cheeks hurt from smiling as she looked at herself in the mirror. She didn't even look like herself anymore. Somehow, it felt like a connection to Katsuki that she didn't know she had finally been broken. Momo, Izumi smiled despite the tear that had fallen down her cheek. Thank you. So much. Momo just hugged her from behind. My pleasure. Let me do it again sometime. I was right. You really do have amazing hair. The process of discovering a new symbol was equal parts random and time-consuming. She could go weeks of practicing, drawing, and banging her head against the wall with there being absolutely zero progress beyond her drawing speed, maybe getting a bit better. And then there were times when she discovered a whole other layer to her quirk that made everything about it better. In this case, it was a whole new category of runes for her to try and learn. Target was the name of her newest category, and currently, much like the rest of her categories, it was very limited. Right now she could only target objects. A single object. But that was okay. Unless she was dealing with someone that was naked, everyone had an object she could target. And her force arrows did have a bit of splash damage to them. There was also a difference between how the targeting an object worked with her two shape effects. Alright, Momo. Izumi held her fingers in front of her, the glowing light of her quirk at her focus. Fire when ready. Right? Momo shouted, standing near a catapult she had made during their mutual quirk practicing session. Of the main reasons that Izumi loved going to Momo's house, the giant yard where they could do lots and lots of mildly dangerous and stupid quirk-related stuff that wouldn't be allowed during the few hours a week of quirk practice they got at school was a major one. Remember, only destroy the water balloons and save the Matryoshka doll. Apparently those Russian dolls that were stacked inside of each other were called Matryoshiki, Matrioshark, Marty. Momo pulled on her catapult and all the objects were sent high into the air. One Matrywhatever doll floating alongside 3 water balloons. Target object, force ball. The doll thing spun in the air like it was trapped inside of an invisible washing machine as its momentum was slowly dissipated inside of the force sphere. Target object, force, arrow. Target object, force, arrow. Target object, force, arrow. The first arrow appeared beside her and flew straight, hitting the first water balloon in the air with a satisfying splat. The second arrow shot off and missed the target on its downward arc, exploding in the air nearly a foot above the target with a flurry of sparkles. The last arrow never happened. Izumi looked at her glowing fingers and sighed. She still needed to get faster at drawing. Even with just 3 runes, it took her way too long to draw the pattern, and by the 3rd time she had already screwed it up. Speed and accuracy needed to be worked on a lot if she was going to be a real hero. But that brought up a problem with how her new rune worked. Target object plus arrow only targeted where the object was right as it was casted, meaning that if the object was moving, it would likely miss. The only reason why she hit the first one was because she fired the arrow right at the apex when it was going slower. On the other hand, target object plus ball made the sphere appear around the target. Wow! Momo clapped and ran over to her. That was amazing, Izumi. Your new rune is really useful. The bright, pleasant smile on Momo's face made all of Izumi's doubt vanish, if only for a little while. Thanks, Momo, your quirk is amazing too. At least this way I don't have to worry about breaking targets. It was the best of both worlds. Momo got to use her quirk without having to figure out what she was going to do with the stuff she made, and Izumi got to break stuff without worrying about replacing it. Win-win. But I'm not sure it's really useful right now. Izumi sighed and stared at her finger again. Her new combinations had a lot of problems. What do you mean? Momo pointed towards the Russian doll still floating in the bubble. If that alone was a quirk, you'd be able to save people by protecting them, or even capture villains. Izumi shook her head and ran her hand through her now very silky hair. Ever since Momo had gone through the trouble of taming it for her, maintaining her hair had been the least she could do. Besides, she liked having her hair be manageable, and she looked cuter now. I don't think that would work. For one, she picked up a rock and chucked it towards the floating sphere, only to miss. Ball is really fragile and not as destructive as arrow is. I might be able to get more out of it with a different effect, but right now it doesn't take much for it to stop working. Izumi looked towards Momo's catapult and stuck out her fingers. Target object, force, ball. She felt her stamina drain, she felt the spell work, and she saw the runes shimmer that blue glow, but nothing happened on the catapult. Plus, it doesn't work if I target something too big. I think that ball might be kinda useless. Momo popped out another doll from her arm and held it up to Izumi. It doesn't matter how specific a tool is, eventually you might need it more than anything else. Momo gave another bright smile. You know, I'm really happy both of our quirks are rather difficult to use. Every time I see you do something amazing, it makes me want to try even harder. Genuine praise from Momo, one of the few things that could actually make her feel flustered. The only other person that could really do that was her mother, and for entirely different reasons. Like when her mother cried when she first showed up back home with straight hair, which resulted in photos being sent to every single family member and friend her mother had. Izumi nearly died then. But Momo tossed the doll helplessly behind her. You're looking a bit pale, Izumi. I think that means you should stop before you pass out. She paused, sucking on her lip and blinked a bit before tucking a strand of hair behind her head. Again, Izumi crossed her arms and pouted. It wasn't like she was prone to fainting or anything like that. She'd overdone it a few times, but she hadn't actually passed out, especially since she started with the swim club. Nijire had been so right with swimming being great for her stamina. I guess I am feeling a bit tired. Besides, we do still need to study for Bila-sensei's exam as well. And there was that. At least Bila-sensei was good at teaching, even if she did go on tangents a lot. Plus, she had really cool designs on her tights a lot of the time. Fine. But, we should have some of those really super good snack things that we had last time. The little rolled things. Izumi flailed her hands as she tried to gesture about what she was talking about. She already forgot their name, but they were super duper yummy. Momo gave a cute laugh into the back of her hand. You ate more of those than I did last time, Izumi. So, I'm just saying, I have an excuse with my quirk, but in your case. Hey, I'm a growing girl. Besides, they're so good. She continued to flail her arms, her cheeks feeling a bit on the red side. She placed both hands on her hips and tried to act proud. Besides, I'm a swimmer. I'll burn the calories. How are you enjoying the swim club? Momo asked, head tilted to the side a bit. It's great. Tomorrow we have a meeting to clean the pool, which is supposed to take all day, I guess. She was not looking forward to it at all, but she understood why it was important that they do it as a team or something. Oh, well, if that's the case, would you like to stay the night again? I know that my house is closer to the school than yours. Barely. I mean, I kinda need to get there early. Izumi gave a light smile, and for some reason whenever I stay over at your place we stay up all night talking in your bed. She shot both arms up and outward. I don't even know what we talked about last time. Well, at one point you were talking about how, thick Kuro-sensei is. So the Momo gave a light blush and continued. You were also talking about all your favorite heroes, and I was talking about how soft your hands are, but, don't worry about all that, Izumi. I'll make sure that we go to bed at a reasonable time tonight. Momo kept her word, as they did get into bed at a reasonable time. But they stayed up well past unreasonable just talking about nothing again. XXXX. Noom. Nijire Hato, third year at Haruno Jr. and future hero hopeful, came equipped with her own set of whimsical sound effects that could put a smile on just about anyone's face with how fairy-like Nijire really was. Currently, Nijire was abusing her quirk to push the large fat brush around the bottom of the pool with more speed and vigor than the rest of the class combined. Just looking at her made Izumi just the slightest bit more tired. Izumi let out a long yawn and smiled, propping herself up on her own large brush, and watched as Nijire did another lap. The effectiveness was twofold really. On the one hand she was actually cleaning the bottom, and on the other she was making things a bit more exciting and entertaining. I hope that I can get that much energy one day. You get like that by actually helping, and not sleeping, her white-haired senpai Spee commented. Her own quirk, Aquatail, was activated, allowing her to scrub the ground behind her twice as fast. Unlike Nijire, who was as excitable as could be, Spee was much less so, oftentimes being even more pragmatic and responsible than Kuro-sensei. There was no doubt among the first and second years that next year Spee would be the team captain. Why did you stay up so late? Izumi nearly slipped on the slick ground as she was jolted just a bit more awake at Spee's biting words. She grabbed her brush firmly with both hands at a slightly awkward angle and smiled. Well, I stayed the night at Momo's again last night, and we, ended up talking a lot and stuff, so I, might have just kind of ended up not getting any sleep. I promise it won't happen again. I didn't. Spee let out a long sigh. I didn't say to not stay with your girlfriend, but just wanted you to be aware that Nijire is like that because 1, she's an idiot. Hey, I heard that, Spee. And 2, she worked really super hard to get to where she is now, and Spee stopped mid-sentence and looked down towards Izumi's brush. Hey. Nijire came to a skidding stop between the two girls. What are you talking about me? Is it about Izumi's hair? Oh, or is it? Nijire stopped too, but only for a second. Hey, Izumi, why is your broom glowing? Izumi looked at her broom. The brushes on the end were glowing, and so far she had left a trail of hundreds of brush marks on the ground that were quickly fading like she was using her quirk with hundreds of incredibly small fingers all at once. That was new. Izumi felt her hands, remembering their position, and then she did something that was probably going to be really stupid. She began to cast. The runes were larger than she had ever attempted to draw them before, and the lines were much thinner, but they all blended together. More spells failed than not, but more than a few were a success. Light forward ball. Dozens of football-sized spheres of light began to appear, most bursting when they made contact with the ground, but a few managed to float forward until they too hit something and exploded with a gentle, soundless sparkle. Her tiredness was completely gone now. This was just as important as any rune she could have discovered. OMG! With this, I won't have to worry about casting the same spell so many times so quickly. I bet I can even get a cool support item made out of this. I'll even be able to cast a lot of force arrows too. Oh, I should see if it'll work with something smaller too, but maybe something that I can wave around, like a staff. Or a witch's broom. Nijire offered and squealed in delight. Oh my god, Izumi! You'd make such a cute witch. Especially if you learned to fly on the broom like this. Nijire straddled her own broom and hovered off the ground for a few seconds. Only much more cool looking. Okay, first of all, this isn't a broom, it's a brush. Izumi pointed towards her own broom. Damn it, brush, and then glared. And second of all, Actually, it's both. Brooms are a type of brush, and depending on where you're from, they can mean both, Spee answered with a cold, always right smile. And I agree with Nijire, you'd make a good witch. I'm not a witch. You totally are. Oh. Nijire clapped her hands. I want to make you wear a really cute witch's hat. Kuro-sensei. Izumi pouted. Why did everyone want her to be a witch? The problem with the brush used to clean the pool was that the actual brush part was at a weird angle from the stick, and combined with the width of the comb head itself made drawing with it really awkward. She was honestly surprised that she had gotten any spells to work the first time, but given the sheer number she tried to draw at once, it shouldn't be a surprise that a few went off. Izumi stared at the long plastic yellow pole that she and Momo had been experimenting with. The black threaded nub at the end made it easy for them to test designs on what would work well with this new aspect of her quirk. They had tried a fuzzy kludge-like design that looked like she was wielding a giant toilet scrubber, a trident-like design, a design that looked like a giant hand, one that looked like the muzzle of a minigun, and countless others. But the truth remained. No matter what her and Momo came up with, nothing was as effective as a simple broom. There were numerous reasons why the design was the best. All of the tips were of similar size, length, and were facing the same direction. In short, it worked because a broom was a bit like a giant paintbrush, and her quirk was effectively calligraphy that could make things explode. Only she couldn't make things explode yet. Gah. I don't want to be a witch though. Izumi swung the pole around in frustration and paced around the gardens of Momo's backyard. This was one of the areas where she really didn't want to make anything accidentally explode or anything bad, but the woods were a quick walk if they wanted to get really serious. Momo looked up from the table that they had commandeered for today's adventures. Snacks and tea rested on a tray, while their homework was left largely unattended, and a pile of potential staff heads was left in a bin waiting to be destroyed. What do you have against being a witch? Because they're creepy. And they brew potions and stuff, and I'm really terrible at chemistry. And they have a really big nose. And they're just not hero-like at all. Izumi pouted and hugged the pole tight against her chest. She really didn't want people to think that she was a witch. They'd be thinking that she was evil and stuff. And they turn people into frogs. I don't think I can do that. Nor do I want to. Okay, but I'm just saying you'd be a super cute witch. Momo gave a joyful laugh that seemed like the perfect noise to make in anticipation of summer. That doesn't mean much coming from you. For some dumb reason, Izumi decided to hook her foot around the base of the pole and then kicked it out from under herself, and because she was holding onto it so tight she effectively flipped herself onto the ground with a thud. You always say I'm super cute. You said I was cute in the morning, and I've seen what I look like in the morning. I'm not cute. Momo giggled again. That was part of the problem. Momo was cute as hell and she was so pretty. I'm starting to think you need glasses. Izumi glared up at her friend from the ground and gave a long, desperate sigh. I did go as a witch for Halloween once. Oh, and was he there? Yep. I see, is that why? I don't know. I'm about to hit 13 and I'm waiting for a reason to wear a training bra. She flailed her arm and thus her pole around in the air in front of her. Partway through she activated her quirk and drew a simple spell. Besides, just because he's a dick doesn't mean I can blame everything on him. Light forward ball. A large ball of light, this size of a beach ball, shot out from in front of her and sailed upwards at a slow, steady pace. The bright late spring day saw it vanish quickly into the sky, well before it reached any sort of limit. Well, Momo stood and stared down at her, her bright smile putting Izumi to ease just a bit. I'm not sure what I can do to help with some of that, but I do mean it when I say you're always cute. That's just because you're my friend. More arm flailing followed by yet more arm flailing. And because you're adorable. Now come on, Momo offered her hand. Do you want to try casting some spells with your broom? Can we call it a giant calligraphy brush? Nope. Meanie. Only when it's for your own good. Izumi stuck her tongue out before she accepted Momo's hand. Grabbing the regular plain, wooden handle, nothing special about its straw-boring broom, they ventured towards their usual spot in the woods. Here a few tree branches had been blown off and there were holes in the dirt and even a catapult that Momo had made for target practice. It was easily one of her favorite spots to relax on a weekend. And she was here every weekend with Momo. It was pretty much accepted that at this point, Izumi stayed the night every weekend. Much like she had done hundreds of times in the past, Izumi spun the broom around like it was a staff. It was awkward and she nearly fumbled, but she managed to get the broom under control before she glanced back at Momo. Sue, what should we do? Well, why don't we just see what happens when you do your least dangerous spell? Momo offered with a shrug. You know, the one that doesn't break things. Or just try drawing with the broom and see what works. Okay, the first step was going to be how to hold the broom, she guessed. With her wand or a paintbrush, she just held them like a pencil, allowing her wrist to do most of the work. But with something as large as a broom it was different. She had to use 2 hands, and her elbows were going to be doing most of the work? Or was it her shoulders? Her stomach? How should she move? With her lips bit, Izumi began the clumsy process of drawing with the broom once again. Despite discovering the trick a few weeks ago, she hadn't really had a decent chance to practice it, mostly because of tests and swim club. With one hand near the back of the broom and another towards the middle, she found that the end was unwieldy. A dip here. A swoop there. A swish there. Light, forward, arrow. Most of the time casting light had no real effect on her stamina. Even when she made a bunch of spheres as fast as she could barely feel the drain. In theory, she should have been okay. In theory. But theories were designed to be tested. And this theory failed. She saw the blade of light shoot from the tip of the broom, hundreds of little rays all bound in a tight, slightly wide clump that looked like someone was waving a flashlight at a camera. For what felt like a few seconds she was able to smile at her work. And then things felt cold. She was going to pass out. It felt like she had just swum 1,000 laps as fast as she could without stopping in the coldest water she could possibly find. All of her muscles felt tense, both numb and sore, and even her bones were aching. Her mouth was dry and her head was pounding. But above anything else was the feeling of the complete lack of energy inside of her. Every part of her body felt like it was being weighed down by sand, and she could barely even open her eyes to see herself staring up at the ceiling of one of the rooms in Momo's house. A breath through the nose and a wonderful scent filled her to the brim. She turned slightly and saw those snacks she absolutely loved waiting for her next to fruit, tea, and a few other items that she was going to be hankering for. With a burst of strength, Izumi flung herself forward, rolling off the couch with a thud and grabbing a handful of stuff to shove into her mouth. Didn't even taste it. Almost like it knew that any energy it spent now would be refunded quickly enough. Izumi found her second wind hitting hard, and she cracked open a bottle of tea and chugged it in record speed. Yes, we were practicing her quirk. Yes, I have her inside. Yes, I'll let you know if. Momo entered the room, phone against her ear. Well, she woke up and is currently stuffing her face. Momo blinked as Izumi stared at her with a bit of a wild look in her eyes. Yes, I'll let her know not to overdo it in the future. We'll be taking the rest of the day off. Yep, I'll make sure she eats well and gets plenty of rest. Izumi looked at Momo with wide eyes, her cheeks stuffed with as much food as she could stuff into her mouth for a few long seconds. She swallowed and stared at Momo for a few seconds. Was that my mom? Momo raised an eyebrow. No, it was Ms. Byleth. When did Momo learn sarcasm? Who corrupted her? Oh, wait, probably her. Sorry, Izumi muttered, putting down the food for a moment. I guess I'm still not strong enough to try and use the broom yet. Probably should have thought that out more. Don't worry about it. Momo flexed her arm and gave her a cheeky wink. I'm getting used to carrying you around. Izumi just pouted for all of 2 seconds before her stomach growled and reminded her that there was food and tea to be drunk. Oh, dinner is on its way soon. So there was a buzz and Momo jumped. Oh, I guess it's already here. Sit tight. Izumi grunted and let herself lull in place a bit as she felt her energy return to her. She was ready for a peaceful afternoon with Momo now. Just talking, watching movies, and not doing anything that could make her pass out again. They might actually go to bed at a reasonable hour this time. Probably not, but they might. That notion was completely and utterly screwed over when Izumi realized just who exactly was bringing them dinner. Nijire bounced into the room carrying some bags that had super large bowls of ramen in them. She had a big smile on her face and her hair was pulled into a ponytail. Nijire-chan's super duper awesome speedy ramen delivery service and super duper sleepover improver is here to make your night super extra amazing. Izumi opened her mouth but really couldn't think of anything to say at that moment, so she just made a random pointless noise. She watched as Nijire moved the snacks out of her reach and placed a large bowl in front of Izumi. The seal on the top was popped off to reveal the still steaming ramen that had been hidden. A blast of powerful aroma hit her right in the face and her stomach twisted to make room for the feast she was about to partake in. Here, Nijire held the chopsticks in front of Izumi and smiled. I know what it's like and nothing will recharge you better than Hanayama ramen. Momo texted me saying that you fell down and I was going to get some anyway, so now I'm here and we're going to have a great time. Izumi barely heard what Nijire was talking about, she was too busy eating. And she wants my help in dressing you up as a witch. She did hear that. Here, hold this. Ooh, what do you think about this? Oh, black is a must. It'll make her hair and eyes stand out a lot. On it. Highlights though. Gold. Gold goes with black, right? I think so. Izumi felt her eye twitch as she watched Nijire and Momo zoom around the gigantic closet that Momo had access to. Apparently there was stuff that would make her look like a witch in there, which was both amazing and whatever the exact opposite of thrilling was. Boring? No, it wasn't boring, it was just, yeah. She let her shoulders slump and glanced back towards the makeup. Wonder when they're going to give me a wart? Never. Nijire appeared in front of Izumi, upside down, a flowing black something or other held tight to her chest. Warts are gross. And you're going to be the cutest witch ever. So no warts. Maybe a beauty mark, but you're not Aroera enough for that. Izumi rolled her eyes and rubbed her arm. Well, I guess that's good, but what do you mean by Aroera? Kuro-sensei. Curse. Izumi pouted and tried to picture her puberty actually starting besides a few zits and all the other stuff. Nothing happened. Alright, Nijire flipped in the air and landed in front of Izumi. Now then, arms out. Fine, fine. Izumi rolled her eyes and complied with this very light bit of torture she was being put through. It wasn't that she didn't love shopping or playing dress-up, because she did. Really, she was just pouting that she was going to become a witch, and she had zero doubt that there was such a thing as a cute witch. Make me as ugly as possible. That's impossible. Momo laughed, showing up with more black, a bit of gold, some red, and a bunch of other stuff that looked like they were going to be making something from scratch. They could sew? No, all of that stuff was actually clothing. Was Momo using her quirk? You're too cute to be ugly, Izumi. Izumi made her stubborn streak known by putting on her ugliest face possible. You're both a lot cuter than me. Thanks. Nijire, a paragon of not knowing what shame or humility meant, didn't even flinch as she continued to dress Izumi the same way her mom used to. But don't worry. We'll all be super cute witches too. And then we're going to watch some anime. Momo announced loudly. I have Toru setting up the home theater for a marathon. Oh, we should dress up as maids sometime. Nijire muttered loudly. More fabric was poured onto Izumi as she felt Momo and Nijire pluck, pull, shift, and sort all the different clothes that were placed on her, her arms going up and down 100 times like she was doing jumping jacks, or maybe like she was swimming. Swimming through a sea of clothing that was desperately trying to drown her in it. There was so much black and gold being tossed on her, she felt like she was going to end up looking like a green-haired version of some ancient Egyptian mummy. Or like she was going through her goth phase, but with just a bit more bling. A lot of bling. A green-haired goth rapper. With a broom. Izumi kept her eyes shut and just hummed and nodded while Momo and Nijire worked their magic. She felt some makeup brushes tapping her cheeks. It didn't feel like it would be anywhere near enough to really have an effect on her, but there were still dabs, taps, and strokes hitting her cheeks and just a hint around her eyes. All right, Momo said softly. Her voice was really close to Izumi's face, close enough that she could all but feel Momo's breath. Izumi, open your eyes. Ooh, let me get my phone. Nijire said loudly before she bumped into something. Ouch. Izumi opened her eyes expecting to see herself in a mirror. Instead, she saw Momo, which was nothing new. She saw Momo a lot. But this Momo was different, equipped with a large wide-brimmed hat that had a crooked point, a loose white top, and a fluffy black skirt. This was the SSR witch Momo that had top stats in cuteness and an extra skill for proving Izumi wrong. That's cheating. Izumi pointed at Momo and pouted. Of course you'd make a cute witch. You can't do that. Ooh. Momo laughed and then pushed Izumi's shoulder to look at the very cute Nijire that was struggling with the strings of her top. The SSR which Nijire was just as cute as Momo was, with her equally absurd hat, and a long dark purple dress with hints of red that was tied with a dark black cloth tied around her waist. You don't think Nijire is cute as a witch? I'm kawaii as fuck yo. Nijire struck a pose and held up her cell phone. Now come on. Let's take a cute witchy selfie. And then when we get to UA we should do the same thing but in our hero costumes. Izumi can still be a witch though. I'm not. Izumi's protest was cut off by both Momo and Nijire sandwiching her in a loose hug. Both of them were a bit taller than her, and she felt soft things press against her arm. Show-offs. But her protest really died when she caught a glance of herself in Nijire's phone. A bit of green shadow around her eyes. A bit of color to her cheeks to bring out her freckles. Nothing on her lips. A golden see-through cloth was wrapped around her neck and tied in a cute little bow, highlighting the hints of green around her clothing. The dress they had put her in was plus ultra levels of cute. A dark green band stretched from her neck and all the way down to the fluffy white hem of the skirt, though the rest of the dress was largely black, with hints of purple and green woven throughout it, and the sleeves having several moons and stars along the loose hanging curtains that hung off her wrists. Smile? Nijire said loudly. Izumi did so. Even if she had to swallow her pride and admit that a cute witch could exist. She still wasn't going to be a witch for her hero costume though. XXXX. Momo and Nijire had changed her mind. Witches could be cute. But that didn't really fix any of her current problems. Izumi placed her pencil on the paper, drawing a simple version of herself standing on the blank canvas. With a grumpy smile, she added on a witch's hat, and then drew herself with a broom. When she had managed to use the broom before passing out, it had felt more than a bit awkward to use. A wand was easy, she just held it like she would a pencil. But how was she supposed to hold a broom? She drew herself holding the broom like she would any old broom. While that seemed comfortable, it was probably more awkward to draw with it like that. Besides, she'd basically be drawing on the ground, and her feet would get in the way. That wouldn't work at all. Holding it like a baseball bat would let her whack people with the broom good enough, and she'd be holding it off the ground so she could probably even make a few marks like that, but it wouldn't be precise enough for her to complete any real spell. Or would it? She'd be having a wider arc, and she'd never drawn anything that big, so maybe it wouldn't be too bad. But drawing a spell that big with a broom might actually kill her. She added a dead version of her laying on the ground and an empty bar next to her. Maybe if she ever actually managed to increase her stamina or endurance, or whatever it was that let her use her quirk, she'd be able to use a broom like that, but even then it really didn't seem cool enough. If she grabbed onto the base of the broom, right about where the handle met the brush part, then she'd be able to draw smaller circles and have more control over it. But then she'd have all the leftover parts of the broom handle, and she'd basically just be using a duster. As uncool as a broom was, a duster was even less cool. Juch, what am I going to do? Izumi bit into the end of her pencil and ran her hand through her hair. She was still surprised by how smooth her hair felt. She glanced towards Momo but found herself staring at the thighs of Bila-sensei that was currently staring at her with a blank look. I can meet me after class? Bila-sensei let out a deadpan response and tapped on Izumi's journal before resuming her lecture. Izumi sighed. There was no way she was going to be able to pay attention in class with all these thoughts in her head. Who cared about the French Revolution and, hold up, they were beheading people. XXXX. Momo, try not to get detention. Izumi, do they even have detention at this school? Momo, I don't know, but I've never had detention. Have you? Nijire, twice. I talk a lot. Momo, I believe that. Izumi, a few times mostly because of that guy. Momo, oh well, I'm sure you'll be fine. Nijire, yeah. Besides, Bila-sensei is actually really nice even if she has a resting bitch face. Izumi, should I show her that text? Nijire, gasp, you wouldn't. Izumi pocketed her iPod once more and walked into the teacher's lounge, where she found Bila-sensei her usual black suit jacket off, giving the normally stuffy teacher a whole new look. The white blouse she had on was snug around her chest and pulled into her skirt with a tightness that Izumi could have sworn only models could pull off. The sleeves of her shirt even ballooned outward until they reached her wrists, where they were pinched tight. In short, Byleth-sensei was a babe. And the fact that they both had green hair made Byleth-sensei look like Izumi's older sister. Her older sister was a babe. Byleth-sensei, you wanted to see me? Izumi asked, flinching more with each word. She didn't want to be in trouble. Byleth-sensei looked up from her work, her dark bluish-green eyes focused on Izumi with an intensity that wasn't entirely bad. With more respect that Izumi really deserved, Byleth-sensei placed her work down, turned in her chair, and addressed Izumi firmly. What exactly were you drawing in my class today? Well, you see, I discovered recently that I can use my quirk with a broom and that I'd be able to draw a bunch of spells and stuff, so I was trying to figure out a good way to wield a broom so it'd be comfortable and give me the ability to draw big circles if I need to or a bunch of small circles too. But I'm not really sure how I'm supposed to hold it to draw best because my quirk needs to be precise, but I'm not sure how precise, and I think there might be more I can do with a staff or a broom, so I'm sorry I was drawing in your class, sensei. Please forgive me. Byleth-sensei, who had been staring intently, like she was absorbing every single rambling word of hers, just stared at Izumi then nodded. I understand. She stood sharply. Come with me. Am I in trouble? No. I do have swim practice. I'll talk to Kuro-sensei later. Oh, okay. Byleth-sensei led Izumi to the locker room and pointed inside. Get dressed, you're going to be sweating a lot today. With what? Izumi shifted and stared at her feet. Even though Byleth-sensei had said she wasn't in trouble, she still kind of felt like she was in a bit of trouble. You still haven't told me what we're going to be doing. Oh. Byleth-sensei tapped on her cheek and gave a smile for perhaps the first time. I'm going to be helping you. With? Izumi asked, eyes going wide. Weapons training. Oh. That. Byleth-sensei? Yes, Izumi? Is a broom a weapon? Izumi was kind of magical. And not just because of her quirk. Kia. Momo poked her head into the small gymnasium where she had been meeting Izumi on the first Thursday of every month just in time to see the familiar sight of Izumi getting bodied by their homeroom teacher Byleth-sensei. The statuesque older woman didn't even flinch as they performed yet another routine. Even though school was closed for summer, clubs and Izumi's broom combat training kept both of them coming to school every day. At least most of the time Izumi got to cool off in the pool. But not today. Momo sat down against the wall, her tote bag placed against her side. She had watched this scene countless times. Izumi makes a mistake, gets hit, falls down, then gets right back up with zero hesitation and asking for more. In many ways, that was what was so magical about Izumi. She didn't let things stop her. Watching Izumi spin the foam practice staff that both her and Byleth-sensei were using was a sight to behold. Thanks to Izumi's quirk, the trails of light trailing from both ends wove a pattern in the air. In moments like that, Momo could make out the familiar symbols of Izumi's spells, though they were often far too sloppy or incomplete. Especially in the middle of a spar. Do you want to try again, or would you like to practice your forms more? Byleth-sensei pointed her staff right towards Izumi as a way of declaring yet another challenge. But Momo could see the smile forming on their sensei's face, especially when Byleth-sensei glanced her way and nodded. Izumi looked her way, and Momo could once again see the similarities between the two. There was a rumor that the two were related in some fashion. There were theories that they were sisters or cousins, and even one rumor that had Byleth-sensei as Izumi's mother. Inko was flattered when she found out, but seeing the two in the same room was uncanny. I'm not done yet, Izumi reaffirmed, and Momo couldn't help but notice how much wider Izumi's smile was. Even when she was soaked in sweat, Izumi still looked, well, Momo wasn't sure how she looked. Izumi had always been cute to her ever since she had first met Izumi, but Izumi was just, well, Izumi. Her smile lit up the room. Ready when you are, sensei. Even Byleth-sensei was affected by Izumi's real magic. When Momo first met Izumi, Izumi had taken her hand and pulled her forward. She knew exactly what she wanted to be, and was devoting everything into being a hero. It was all Izumi talked about, and it was probably all Izumi thought about it. It took a while for Momo to notice that it was contagious, So now Momo found herself chasing after Izumi in an effort to keep up. Momo bit her lip, watching the fight in front of her. A staff would be easy to make. A long, simple cylinder, solid of course for weight and strength. Material? People often suggested tungsten to her, but despite having the highest tensile strength of all metals, it was also rather brittle, so it wouldn't work for striking as the whole thing would just shatter, but even an alloy wouldn't be too useful. Technically, she could make it out of diamond. But there was a good chance that could result in people following her around hoping to scavenge bits. Then again, she only really needed something that was hard enough to give and take a hit, so something as simple as tempered wood or some kind of a carbon wood. A rune lit up. It hung in the air for a few seconds longer than the random scribbles that were the result of the practice. Momo made a quick note to jot the rune down. Hopefully it was one that was new to Izumi. And hopefully it was both useful and one that wouldn't hurt Izumi when she uses it. Momo bit her lip and smiled at Izumi again. If she wanted to keep up, then she was going to need to train just as hard. Sensei. Momo stood, pulling a replica staff out of her arm at a steady speed. May I join in? XXXX. Hey Momo. Izumi slammed down next to her on their usual rooftop lunch spot, a grin on her face that meant that Izumi was up to the opposite of no good. Even after knowing Izumi for a year now, Momo always found new things to be surprised about with Izumi. From her drive, to her creativity, to her smile. Especially those smiles. A box of Pocky dangled in front of Momo's face and Izumi's alluring smile spread onto Momo's face. Pocky? Momo laughed. It wasn't a treat they had frequently, but she was familiar with it now. You're going to have to do more than that to impress me. Oh, I've given up on that, but that doesn't mean I can't entertain you. Izumi drew a small circle in the air, casting one of her new favorite spells, Target Control. It allowed her to move an object as she saw fit for a period of time. A stick of chocolate Pocky floated out of the box bobbing and weaving along with Izumi's finger. But that doesn't mean we can't have fun. With Pocky? Yep. Izumi turned to face her better on the bench. We're going to play the Pocky game. Winner gets the whole box. And the loser has to let the other do their hair this weekend? I don't even know what the Pocky game is. Oh, Izumi moved the base of the stick in front of Momo's mouth and then pushed it in physically. First, you have to hold the Pocky like this. Momo raised an eyebrow. Then, we both start chewing on the stick while not letting go. Izumi placed her own lips on the other end of the stick, mirth dancing in her green eyes. The loser is the person that pulls back first. Alright, and go. Izumi started munching on the Pocky stick with blazing speed, her face getting closer and closer to Momo's. Momo only managed a few bites before she realized just how close Izumi was getting. Her face felt warm. Was she blushing? It felt like she was blushing. Momo's eyes went wider as Izumi's face, and thus her lips got closer. If this kept up, if Izumi kept marching forward, their lips, they would. A jolt traveled through her lips and met with her spine before spreading out across her entire body. The hair on the back of her neck tingled, her shoulders tensed, her hands grabbed at the fabric of her skirt, and she felt like she might explode. She pulled back on impulse. You kissed me. Hee, I won. Izumi sat and hummed. I can't wait to see how you look with twin tails. Izumi. What? Izumi looked at Momo while munching on another Pocky stick. I'll share, you know. No, I just mean that was my first kiss. Momo placed her hands over her lips. It wasn't that she was offended really, she was just surprised? Yes, surprised felt like the correct word. Oh. Izumi finished off the Pocky stick and then smiled. Well, that was my first kiss too, so we're even. Besides, we're both girls, so it should be fine, right? I guess. Momo let out a sigh, desperately trying to calm herself after what had just happened. Was it really fine if girls kissed? Even when it felt like that? How was Izumi acting so normally? So, you're not worried about a boyfriend finding out? I was kind of expecting puberty to make me really interested in boys or something, at least that's what my mom said. And all the other girls in our class talk about the boys they see, but I'm not really interested in them. Izumi hummed, and patted the most obvious sign that her puberty had started, her chest. While Momo still had an inch or two height-wise, Izumi was catching up quickly in other areas. I guess I just never really noticed them. My mom says that it's because I spend too much time around girls and that I'm too focused on becoming a hero. Izumi blinked, then looked at Momo with a wide smile. What about you? Did you find a boyfriend? No, nothing of the sort. Momo waved her hand and let out a sigh. Why did she even bring this topic up? I'm the same as you, I guess. I don't really notice any boys, and I spend most of my time with you, so I guess I just don't really have the time for stuff like that. Yeah, Izumi laughed, kicking her feet and leaning back, another stick of Pocky hanging in her mouth. I am kind of a handful, right? Yes, you are. Rematch? Izumi dangled a Pocky stick between them. She didn't say no. XXXX. Momo raced towards the swimming pool, the cold December air not stopping her for a second. Of all the things she had told Izumi in their nearly 3-year-long friendship, this was perhaps the biggest, best, and most amazing news either one of them had gotten so far. Even beating the news that Nijire had won the sports festival her first year at UA. Izumi! Momo shouted, ignoring her status as the class president for a few moments as she ran, and then fast walked around the pool where Izumi had spent a great deal of time. This year was no exception, especially since Izumi had become the swim team captain. Their last year of middle school had flown by with how busy they both were getting ready for the UA entrance exam. But that might not matter soon. Captain, one of the first years shouted, a short girl with white hair that was the younger sister of one of their old senpais. She had a shark-based quirk that made her a natural swimmer. Your girlfriend is here. We're not, Momo mumbled under her breath as she headed towards the ladder Izumi was likely to take out of the pool. For some reason, everyone on Izumi's swim team referred to her as Izumi's girlfriend. Which wasn't true at all. Sure, they hung out a lot, but they weren't dating. Who cared if they were each other's first kiss? Not Izumi, that's who. The girl didn't even care that over a year ago she had just casually taken that from Momo and didn't even apologize or anything. She even took the second one. Why was she thinking about this now? Momo shook her head and watched as Izumi swam over to her. Seeing Izumi exit the swimming pool was nothing new to Momo. She had seen it happen more times than she could count. But this time was so very different. The Mousa girl that Momo had first met 3 years ago was a distant memory, and now, Izumi was a bombshell. The years of constant swimming had helped shape Izumi's body into one that anyone could consider attractive. Her back was a work of art, her muscles flowing effortlessly through the water as she reached up and grabbed onto the ladder with her toned, slender arms that were a bit rough to the touch at times. The swimsuit that Izumi wore showed off her wide, full hips and matching powerful thighs, giving her a pair of shapely legs that could be called neither long nor short, just nice. There was something appealing about the tightness of Izumi's swimsuit as well, like the way it emphasized her waist, or the way compressed her bountiful chest, that made Momo incredibly happy. Maybe it was the lighting, maybe it was the excitement, but seeing Izumi like that felt like it was the first time she had truly seen her. And Momo really liked what she saw. Like a lot. To finish it off, Izumi pulled off her cap, letting loose the long silky green hair that Momo had spent so much time tending to. The smile on Izumi's freckled face, the glow of her eyes, and the smoothness of her lips all caught Momo off guard as a thought slammed into her with enough force to snap her jaw shut. Her sexuality had just bought a one-way ticket out of the closet and made it known to Momo. She was gay. Very, very, very gay. Ga! Izumi yelped when she stepped out of the water and sprinted towards the bleachers, giving Momo a good glance at that body in motion and Izumi's really nice but along the way. Cold. Ga! Izumi grabbed a towel and wrapped herself up in a towel, before shuffling back towards Momo and then wrapped them both up. Izumi's soft, wet chest pressed lightly against Momo's arm, causing her sleeve to dampen. It's cold. Momo, give me your warmth. Yes. Momo stared at Izumi for a bit, her brain freezing as it processed roughly 3 years of being attracted to Izumi into a single thought. She was really, really gay, and madly in love with Izumi. That made a lot of things make a lot of sense. Momo? Izumi asked, raising an eyebrow. Are you okay? Oh, ugh. Momo blinked and became rather aware of how close Izumi was to her. She stepped out of Izumi's towel embrace and brushed her hair back slightly. You're still wet. Hee hee, I know. Izumi laughed and started the process of properly drying herself. Had that always been so lewd? Memory said yes. Oh God, she had seen Izumi naked how many times? How many times had she stared at her chest? A lot. They took baths together a lot. To us. Yeah. So, what did you want to talk about? You sounded really excited. Huh? Momo asked, staring at the jiggle on Izumi's chest as the girl worked the towel. She swallowed and shoved both her sexual desires and crush on Izumi back into the closet from where they came. They didn't listen, but she was not going to say anything. Because there was nothing more terrifying to her at the moment. I just wanted to let you know that we've both been accepted to participate in the recommendation exams next week. Byleth-sensei pulled a few. Izumi let out a scream and once again Momo found herself wrapped up in Izumi's embrace. Only this time it was front to front with Izumi wrapping her arms around Momo while laughing and spinning around. Oh my God. Really? That's great, Momo. I can't believe it. We're so going to ace those exams. This is great. We should celebrate. Momo could die right then and be incredibly happy with her life. Fortunately, she only blushed. A lot. The UA recommendation exam. Because of Byleth-sensei being a former pro hero, as well as their good grades and the excellent standing of their school, both Momo and Izumi had gotten a chance to take the recommendation exam. This would give them 2 chances to get into UA, and if they got through on recommendations, it would, well, Izumi didn't know what it would do if they got in through recommendations, but it was a good chance anyways. Izumi flailed her arms around and looked at Momo, before looking back at the UA entrance. Izumi, I get that you're excited, Momo laughed and smiled at her, but don't get so excited you end up puking. Izumi pouted and puffed her cheeks out at Momo. She only had to puke a little. It wasn't like she had actually done that before. Okay, she might have when she got really excited about actually being recommended, and actually being accepted as a recommendation, but that was completely different. There's no way I could ever puke at UA, Momo. Momo looked at Izumi like she was full of crap. Which just wasn't true. She pooped earlier today. So the only thing inside of her was the lunch she and Momo, mostly Momo, had eaten earlier because both of their quirks required they had energy to burn, and pure hype and awesomeness. Don't make promises you can't keep, Izumi. Momo, she whined and crossed her arms over her chest, her winter school uniform doing a terrible job at making her not feel cold. It thought you were my friend. Momo poked her on the forehead and pushed her back slightly. I am, and don't you ever forget it, that's why I have to ground you in reality. Like the reality that we're going to pass this thing and then go to UA? She held out her hand for Momo to grab. Momo grabbed her hand and they nodded at each other. Right? We're both going to UA. There were more applicants heading towards the main building where the written exam would be held. After that, it would be time to suit up and head to the interview section before the practical course. A tall guy with a buzz cut walked past them, his long legs helping him speed past everyone else. Holy crap, that guy is tall, Izumi muttered to Momo as they walked. Yeah, it's hard to believe he's a middle schooler, Momo muttered back. Like you're one to talk. Momo blushed and crossed her arms over her chest. It was always so easy to get her to blush like that. You're not far behind me, Izumi. Hee hee, I know, isn't it awesome? They were bosom buddies. Momo blushed and looked away from Izumi. It was so weird. Momo was easily the hottest, most beautiful girl in the whole school, but she was also the most bashful. A single compliment could send her into a blushing, flustered state that would take her hours to actually recover from. Izumi hoped it wouldn't hamper her ability to take the exam, but Momo was level-headed enough that Izumi probably didn't have to worry about that. Besides, Momo was literally the valedictorian of Haruno Jr. Hey, the tall guy shouted from up ahead, though maybe shout wasn't the right word. That actually sounded like it might just be his normal volume. You're Shoto Todoroki, right? Endeavor's son? I'm Inesa. The boy with half-white half-red hair grumbled something and kept walking while Inesa just stood there stunned. His smile was frozen on his face but his eyes were distant. What did he say? Izumi asked him, leaning forward slightly to look up at the really tall guy. Did something happen to Endeavor? Huh. Inesa looked at her with a shocked expression. Oh, sorry. I was just, well, he said something that Endeavor once said to me is all. But enough of that. I'm Inesa Yorashi. He bowed fast and at a sharp 90 degrees. It's a pleasure to meet you. Nice to meet you as well, Inesa. Izumi couldn't help but giggle as she bowed sharply as well. I'm Izumi Midoriya, and this is my friend Momo Yaoyorozu. We're from Haruno Jr. Hello, Momo said with a slight wave. She was looking slightly uncomfortable about all this. Was it because they were talking to a stranger? Oh, maybe it was that she wasn't used to talking with boys their age? Maybe she was just a sucker for tall boys. Are you here for the recommendation exams as well? I am. Inesa shot back up and introduced himself. I'm from Yamanaka All Boys Academy. I'm hoping to go to UA since it's the most passionate hero school. Yeah. Izumi cheered, pumping one fist up into the air and jumping slightly. That's the spirit, Inesa. I look forward to being your classmate. What's your quirk? Mine's. Izumi, Momo pulled on her shoulder. We need to hurry, we're going to be late for the exam. Ga. Inesa jumped, his smile fading as he took off into a sprint. He stopped a few feet away and sprinted backwards to do that same fast, sharp bow he did earlier. Please excuse me. We can talk later. Sounds good. What followed was a quick lecture from Momo about stranger danger. But they wanted to be heroes. They were basically anti-stranger danger. XXXX. Looks like we'll be in different testing areas. Momo patted on her number card that was currently hanging off the front of her chest like one of those skimpy erotic dancer clothes, only instead of being naked under there, she was wearing a red tracksuit. You know, Izumi poked Momo's number, you should probably just put this on your shirt since you're going to have to open your jacket to use your quirk. Momo turned ever so slightly red. I'll deal with that when it comes to that. Relax, Momo. Your quirk is amazing. You already know that you passed the written exam and nailed the interview, so the practical exam is going to be easy peasy for you. Izumi grabbed both of Momo's hands and held them up in front of their faces. You got this? Now Momo was even more red. She was so easy. Thanks, Izumi, good luck? Thanks. XXXX. Inesa. Izumi spotted the tall boy quickly enough. He was off doing some stretches near the starting line. His teal tracksuit and close-cut hair made him look like he was a thug from Russia, though. The number 41 was stuck to his chest. Izumi ran up in front of him and bounced on her heels. Oh! Inesa bellowed, his voice the kind of naturally loud that would be impossible to ignore. You're the Haruno Jr. girl from the entrance. Izumi, right? Yep. She bounced on her heels a bit and flapped her arms. How'd you do on the written exam? She was going to say that she felt like she did really good thanks to all the studying with Momo, but Inesa looked like he had just been murdered by her words. That bad? He stood straight and scratched the back of his head. He said loudly and with just a bit of shameless pride, am not a good test taker. That's not something you should take pride in, you know. He trailed off and looked away from her. I know. Well, don't worry about it. I'm sure you'll knock it out of the park with your quirk, right? Absolutely. You were asking me about my quirk earlier, weren't you? Inesa's energy was fully restored. Well, it's actually really strong. I can control the air around me. Here what? He held out his hand and Izumi could feel the air swirling around in his palm like a miniature tornado. Her long hair flickered in his breeze before he stopped the movement. I love it even if it has caused me some trouble. Oh. How'd a quirk like that get you in trouble? Inesa turned a bright shade of red that could almost match Momo's blush. I was forced to transfer to an all-boys academy after. Several girls accused me of blowing up their skirts. Did you? It wasn't on purpose, I was just practicing. Oh, well, I believe you. Izumi smiled at him. You might look like a punk, but I can tell you're a really nice guy. Maybe her quirk was really making people blush really hard with a compliment, and her ability to do magic was completely unrelated to her quirk, because Inesa turned into a tomato. Oh, well, thank you. That makes me happy to hear. He shouted and then laughed, arms flailing. But what about you? What's your quirk? Hee hee, Izumi brought up her fingers and drew a simple symbol in the air. It's a bit complicated, but basically, I'm magic. Oh, I see. Well, I look forward to seeing it in action. Izumi glanced towards the obstacle course they were going to have to run through. She'd probably have to get creative over how she tackled every part of it. I think you'll be too busy flying past me to notice, but if we become classmates, I'll really be able to show you what I can do. Just, I agree. He offered his hand to her and gave a great big smile. To future classmates? Yeah. They shook hands, Inasa's large broad hand engulfing her own apparently absolutely tiny hands with ease. Then again, it was to be expected. She was only about 5 feet 3 inches and he was like, super tall. Hey, how tall are you? I just hit 6 feet 2 inches, but I'm still growing. Oh, you're like a foot taller than me. You're tall? Their conversation came to a quick end when their proctor, present Mike, started to speak. All right. With the written test and the interviews finished, it's time for the real show to start. Yeah. Come to the starting line. Izumi took her place in the middle of the pack and instantly felt like something was ever so slightly off. Not only was she the shortest one in the lineup by far, but she was also the only girl. Did Momo end up in a girl-only lineup? Did she get swapped? Did you even care and this was just an accident? Oh, Inasa was standing next to Endeavor's son. What was his name again? Shoto Todoroki. She wondered what kind of a quirk he'd have. Alright, we got a hell of a lineup today. Yeah. Present Mike spun, his arms outstretched as he gestured towards the large obstacle course that they would have to go through. And this exam is simple. Get to the finish line using your quirks however you can. He held his arms up high with a wild look in his eyes. Well, what are you waiting for? Go! Izumi jumped and watched as Inasa blasted off the ground with ease, his quirk giving him a powerful lead while Shoto followed after with a trail of ice. Whoa, so fast. Hey girlie, less gawking, more running. Izumi jumped again and trailed behind most of the other students. Out of all of her spells, she had nothing that would help her move faster. Technically, she had stuff that could make the others slower, but that wasn't very hero-like at all. She sprinted at her top speed, her countless hours of swimming taking her stamina to a level where something like this wouldn't tire her out. She ran past one of the other applicants and quickly approached the first real obstacle, a mud pit. One of the other applicants was trying to use the ice bridge that Shoto had made and another was climbing out of the mud looking very unhappy. How to cross the mud? 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 Spell. Barrier. Target. Weaving her spell while running, Izumi felt the first bit of fatigue hit her as she conjured a barrier in the middle of the pit. The barrier looked like a gigantic bubble that she had blown so many times during the summer, only instead of being flimsy, it was solid. Very solid. Its offensive power was 0, but the barrier's defensive power was maximum, making it the exact opposite of force. She jumped and landed on the dome with a sound like a sheet of tin foil being shaken. The slippery surface was more hazardous than the mud below, as the barrier had a texture like polished glass. Her footing slipped, but she landed forward and managed to push off, giving her just enough momentum to reach out and catch the other side of the pit to pull herself up. With a thought, she canceled the effect and heard the sound of someone jumping into the mud behind her. Sorry. It was his own fault for not using his own quirk. Izumi followed the trail of ice to the next obstacle where she actually caught up to Shoto for just a moment. A gate blocked her way forward, her number hanging right above it in bright red characters. A few hundred targets moved around the nearby forest, each one had a number, and more than a few had been destroyed by ice or wind. There was even a station with slingshots. Not that she'd need those. Izumi scanned the targets for her own set of numbers. Force, target, guided, arrow. She fired off 2 bolts at once, slamming into the targets with enough force to destroy them and watched as her gate opened up. She might not be able to catch up to those 2, but she could still compete. Somehow, she managed to stay ahead of the other students, but she couldn't catch up to Shoto and Inasa. By the time she finally got within sight of the 2 of them, she saw that Shoto's ice was giving him an advantage over Inasa's wind until Inasa let out a burst of wind at the last second and flipped forward over the finish line. She couldn't see from so far back, but it looked like Shoto still won. Something to make me go fast. Izumi grunted and started sprinting further. If only she could turn herself into a force arrow and then… Actually, what if she did just that? Self-forward. Nothing. Self-forward arrow? Nothing. Damn it. She screamed and sprinted harder. Nice lungs, girly, Present Mike commented when she crossed the line. In any other year, you'd probably be first, but this year you went up against those two. Izumi let out a light pant to catch her breath and smiled. Really? That makes me feel a lot better. Don't worry, once I figure out a spell for it, I'll be able to beat them too. Present Mike slapped his head against his forehead. She beats last year's average by a minute and she's still not happy. Sheesh, this year's batch is something else. And she's still not even tired. Years of swim practice. You were running. Same thing. No. Izumi shrugged and walked over to Inesa, who looked grumpy. Ugh, did something happen? She asked, looking up at her freshly made friend. Were they friends? Sure, why not? They were future classmates and future friends. She looked toward Shoto, who was glaring in a random direction. Again. Inesa's fist tightened into a ball. It's like he's staring at something he can't reach and doesn't care about anything else. I don't think I can go to UA if he's there. Don't let one bad person stop you from going there. She grabbed his fist with both her hands. Come on, Inesa, we're going to be classmates, right? Yurei's going to be great if you're there. Okay, her quirk had to be blush-related. I guess I can make do. The UA school uniform was absolutely amazing. The jacket was comfortable, the shirt might be a bit tight on her chest, but that really wasn't its fault, and she even got to wear a tie that she couldn't tie for the life of her. The skirts were also super cute. The green really matched her hair, and it was just fun to shake her hips and make her skirt move. Plus UA was super relaxed when it came to leggings. In order to pay homage to her mentor Bila-sensei, Izumi had decided to start wearing leggings with a design on them. They were almost entirely for show and had no purpose, but they looked cool. Even if she did rip them sometimes when she put them on. Seriously, how did Bila-sensei never tear these things? Momo. Izumi ran up to her friend, all but skipping as she did so. It was their first day at UA and she couldn't help but feel excited. Are you ready to become a hero? Izumi. Momo did not share any of Izumi's enthusiasm and instead looked at the girl with a slight frown. With a long sigh, Momo placed her bag down and grabbed onto Izumi's tie. Honestly, how did you even get your tie like this? I thought you were supposed to be good with your hands. Hey! Izumi flailed her hands and glanced at the other students who were staring. Especially the guys. She hadn't seen Inesa yet though. Momo, people are staring. They're going to stare at you anyways, Momo muttered and then pulled on her tie, somehow fixing it with ease. At least now you look proper. I didn't before? Izumi asked, still being held in place by her tie. Momo gave a light smile and continued to adjust Izumi's clothes. Honestly, she was worse than her mother. Almost never, but don't worry, you're always cute, though, I knew I should have had you stay the night. Does this shirt even fit? Kinda. Momo rolled her eyes and let out another long sigh. Well, maybe they'll have a bigger one you can get in the nurse's office or something, just no taking off your jacket. Or stretching. Yes, honey. Izumi rolled her eyes and smiled, she laughed, and Momo laughed with her. I really don't know how I'm going to survive class without you. Yeah, it's going to be different, Momo muttered, her hand finally falling from Izumi's tie. But we're only a room apart from each other, and we'll be able to have lunch together like always. And you can stay at my house whenever you want. And, a low growl sent a chill of dread down Izumi's spine. It might have been years since she heard him speak, but the tone of his voice, the almost harsh gravel-like sound, that was a verbal equivalent of a bad bike crash on a gravel path. She knew exactly who was behind her. You Izumi? Katsuki Bakugo asked from behind her. It was less a question and more a demand of verification. Heroes weren't afraid. And she wasn't. But she was angry. Every single moment that Katsuki had teased her, had bullied her, had picked on her, had treated her like she was worthless and couldn't be a hero came boiling up. She let out a breath and pushed those feelings aside. She wasn't the same person she was back then. But him. He might be different. He had the same look in his eyes that he always did. Angry, petty, spiteful, arrogant, all overpowering the kindness she once saw in there. She tried to find some kind of regret in his eyes, but all she saw was even more self-importance. It is you. His eyes narrowed as he glanced her up and down. She had been ogled before, mostly by boys at swim meets, and a few times in public, but this was different. You're different. He was taller than her. The difference was more than it had ever been. It was easy to see that Katsuki had been as serious about being a hero as she had. And you haven't changed. He snorted. Whatever. He turned and glanced at her once again. I'm going to class. Izumi watched as Katsuki tore a warpath through the other students, growling and barking at anyone dumb enough to be walking slower than him. Was that? Momo asked, her voice trailing off. Him. Izumi finished for her. It was. Oh, Momo grabbed her hand, forcing Izumi to relax her fists that had been wrapped so tight that the color had drained from her knuckles. Well, try not to let him bother you too much, all right? Besides, I think you could probably beat him with your quirk now. Right? Maybe. Izumi tried to relax, but it had turned her excitement into dread so quickly. She should have known that Katsuki would have tried to get into UA, not that she would have let that stop her. Probably. Hopefully. Is it wrong? I hope he's in your class and not mine? If he's in yours, we could probably use that as a justification for transfer into mine. Momo squeezed her hand one last time and gave a smile that really made Izumi feel like everything was going to be all right. XXXX. To her relief, Katsuki was in Class 1A. But there was absolutely no one that she even recognized in Class 1B. She didn't know how to function without Momo in her class. What was she going to do? All she knew what to talk about was swimming, boobs, her quirk, heroes, Momo's quirk, random witch-related facts, Momo's bra size, food, and like hair. And who knows what else? Did she even have a personality? Momo. What was her personality? Izumi stared at the majority of her classmates with wide, slightly dazed eyes as she stood at the entrance of the room, her arms flapping gently at her hips like she was a lost penguin desperately trying to find its mother. Oh hey! A floating head with thick dark green hair that reminded Izumi just a bit of seaweed appeared in front of her. You were at the recommendation exams, right? You're the girl that almost got crushed by a giant robot, right? Yeah. What a crappy thing to be remembered for. That's great. A headless body wandered over and grabbed the floating head before the two fused. I'm Setsuna Tokage. Sorry if I spooked you, I have a habit of losing my head. Setsuna started to laugh. She was the type of person that made terrible puns and then laughed at them. Izumi could relate. Izumi gave a great big smile and placed her hands on her hips. I'm Izumi Midoriya. I take it you're the one I should ask if I ever need a hand? Setsuna chuckled and waved her handless arm at Izumi. I think we're going to get along just fine. Oh great, there's two of you. A pale-looking man that looked like some kind of a monster with how his teeth sat on the outside of his skin, making him look like a skeleton. He looked familiar. I'm Jozu Hananuki, the guy you dumped into the mud during the exam. Oh, I remember you. You were the creepy-looking guy. Izumi pointed at him and stared at him until Setsuna started to howl in laughter. Oh, I said the quiet part out loud, didn't I? Don't worry, I'll only hold it against you for a few years. Aren't we going to be classmates for a few years? Yep. Bah. Setsuna howled in laughter. You two are great. So, hey, what's your quirks? Mine lets me take my body apart and then control my bits? Jozu spoke first, raising his hand before Izumi could get over someone asking her about one of her favorite subjects. It's called softening. Essentially, I can cause objects to soften to the point that it's like mud or quicksand. I couldn't really find a use for it during the obstacle course though. He looked at her and raised a fuzzy white eyebrow. Alright, before you explode, what's your quirk? Oh, it's called symbology. Izumi brought up her pointer and middle fingers and drew a simple line in the air. Basically, I can draw stuff in the air, and if I draw the right stuff, she drew a simple spell making a disc of light appear in her hand. I can make effects happen. Currently I have about 20 effects I can combine into what I call spells. She swiped her disc out of the air and flailed her arms. So far I can make barriers, shoot missiles, move objects and make light. I even have some symbols. I have no idea what they do. Setsuna began. Sounds like a lot of bullshit. Jozu finished. Honestly, it makes me happy when people say that. Izumi laughed, putting both hands behind her back. I really like to experiment with my quirk. I still have a lot to learn. That's why you're here. A gruff, almost angry voice commanded from behind her. Izumi spun and saw her teacher, the sanguine hero Vlad King, standing behind her with a clipboard in his hand. He was the kind of person that Izumi would just describe as extra large, given how he probably had a foot on her and she was less than half of his weight. Oh, sensei. Take your seats. Vlad sensei gave a firm order to the whole class. I need attendance before we can head to orientation and then properly begin your hero training. There was an eager scramble to their seats before everyone settled down and looked at their new sensei. Don't look now, but I'm pretty sure the ginger is checking you out, Setsuna whispered in Izumi's ear. So far Izumi had seen Setsuna's head off her shoulders more often than on, which could explain why the girl always seemed to have her head in the clouds. My name's Itsuka Kendo, said Ginger spoke in a firm voice. And I wasn't checking her out? Oh, then what were you doing? Because honestly, you were staring at her back the moment I was trying to figure out what kind of body she had. Thick. Setsuna purred. See, I told you she was checking you out. Izumi pulled her head through the UA gym shirt and then pulled her hair out a moment later. She gathered her hair with one hand and then slipped it into a tight ponytail to keep it out of her face during this quirk assessment test that Vlad sensei wanted to do. She assumed it would, at the bare minimum, mean using her quirk. She glanced and saw that Itsuka was currently glaring at Setsuna's head with her cheeks more than a little flushed. I meant as in how she got her muscles. Like what sport she did in middle school. Like you're a track and field member. Itsuka pointed towards Setsuna's body, and then towards herself. I did kendo, and Reiko over there wasn't in any sports club. The white-haired girl that liked to hold her hands like she was a ghost gave a thumbs up. Wow, you were checking everybody out. Setsuna let out a snarky laugh before her head floated over towards her body. But you're right, I did do track. I was a long-distance runner. See, I was just trying to figure out what sport Izumi did. Itsuka let out a huff, her pea shirt gripped tight in her hand. Sorry for staring. Oh. Izumi laughed and smiled at her new classmate. Don't worry about it. I'm actually a swimmer. I needed something to improve my endurance for my quirk, and a senpai of mine actually convinced me that swimming was really good for that. So, I guess I have a swimmer's body? I guess that makes sense. Itsuka gave a sigh and placed a hand on her hip. That would kind of explain it. Sorry for bothering you with this. Don't worry about it. Izumi placed her hands on her hips and stuck her chest out. I'm proud of my body. With a rack like that, I would be too. Setsuna whistled. Are you a lesbian? Itsuka asked, her cheeks more than a little red. No. Well, stop, you're giving us a bad name. Izumi blinked and watched as their locker room was filled with a sudden silence as everyone processed what Itsuka had just said. So, apparently Itsuka was into girls. And she was checking her out. Hee hee, validation. XXXX. Alright, it seems we have the field to ourselves given how 1A skipped the orientation. Vlad sensei gave a low growl as his massive shoulders slumped. Again, 1A. That was where Momo and Inesa were. And where Katsuki was. Izumi bit her lip and then shook her head again. She'd be able to see them during lunch, it wasn't a big deal. Besides, she could make new friends here, like Setsuna, and Itsuka, and, well, all of her class she guessed. They all wanted to be heroes after all. This was supposed to be a joint exam, but we'll just have to do without. Vlad sensei turned to face them all, a phone in his hand and his two tusk-like teeth peeking out from his smile. You're all aware of the physical fitness test, yes? Well, this will be the same thing, but you're allowed to use your quirk. Think of this not only in terms of ability, but also creativity. And for fun, we'll be ranking you. Vlad sensei tapped on his phone and brought up a blue hologram that displayed their names in a 2x10 grid. Top 5 get extra credit. That was it? She didn't really understand the syllabus too much when Vlad sensei went over it, but It really didn't seem like extra credit would be super helpful. Besides, she'd still have to work hard to be a hero, and she looked behind her and saw that all of her classmates looked fired up. Was she the weird one here? Probably. But even without the extra credit dangling in front of her, she still wanted to be number one for the sake of being number one. She just needed to figure out how to use her quirk effectively. The 50-meter dash was a dud, as she still had nothing that could actually help her move faster, but she wasn't the slowest even without using her quirk. Next was the grip strength test. "Hey sensei." Izumi ran over to her newest sensei and was once again reminded that not only was she on the short side, but that Vlad sensei was on the really tall side. "Oh, Izumi, correct?" Vlad sensei checked his phone with a light frown and waited for her to nod her head. "What is it? Do we actually have to be gripping the test?" She held out the strength testing device and looked down at it. "I mean, like, with our hands?" Vlad sensei chuckled. "So long as it is being measured by your hands or your quirks, I will accept though, sensei." Itsuka ran, her extra-large hand carrying the shattered remains of the grip tester. "I broke it?" "I'll just put you in first," Vlad muttered and turned to the next student that ran up to him. Izumi took his answer to mean that so long as she used her quirk, it would be fine. Control. She held the grip tester in place right in front of her. "Whoa, telepathy?" Setsuna wandered over to stand next to her. Itsuka joined them. "No, don't you remember what she said about her quirk?" "Not really." Izumi smiled and began to draw the symbols for her next spell. Barrier, object, ring, constrict. A shimmering, glass-like substance formed a ring around the handle of the grip strength tester and began to tighten. While constrict wouldn't actually squeeze the handle, it would stop it from expanding back out. Barrier, ball, expand. A ball appeared in the center of the device, just big enough to fit in the handle. Almost instantly, it began to expand, pushing up against the tester before it burst. Barrier, ball, expand. "Oh wow, so you have the kind of quirk that lets you do a whole lot of things?" Itsuka muttered. Izumi smiled and gave a light wink. "You haven't seen anything yet?" Using her quirk to slowly increase her score, Izumi was able to get the highest rank besides the ones that managed to break the device, like Itsuka. Next up came the standing long jump. Izumi watched as her classmates all managed to propel themselves further than what would otherwise be possible. Setsuna cheated by simply removing her legs and then floating them to the other side with a smug look on her face. Itsuka slapped the ground to jump, and Jozu managed to use his softening quirk to effectively turn the ground into a trampoline. She brought her finger up and drew the symbol she had for upward. She had the direction she wanted to go, but she had nothing that would actually let her target herself. There had to be some kind of a target rune that would affect her. What would her symbol look like? A rune that was just for her. She held her fingers in front of her and began to draw, hoping for there to be some feeling in her that would lead her to the spell. "Izumi?" Itsuka walked forward, a bit of sweat on the girl's forehead. "What are—" It might have been the slight turn she did. It might have been anything else. But her up rune activated. The process of discovering new rune had always been random, oftentimes with unexpected results. But for the first time, Izumi saw a pattern. It was a slight variance of her up rune, one that she could have made by mistake at any time. A one-rune spell. It activated, and she was sent flying up into the air. XXXX. "Thanks again for your assistance." Prinz purred as they made their way down the hallway between the two buildings. "I'm certain that I'll be able to create optimal gear for you in the future, yeah?" Nijire had to resist the urge to squeal. She absolutely loved Prinz's accent. It was so fun. Kind of like a sexy vibrator for her ears. Or like, well, she really didn't know, she just thought it was cute. And super duper sexy. "Oh, no problem. Right, Mirio?" Mirio nodded proudly. The two extra large and heavy boxes he was carrying dwarfed the one that both Nijire and Prinz had taken. It wasn't like they had forced it on him, but he had just screamed, "Power," and picked them both up. "Oh, Prinz, I've heard of a new challenge I think you'd be great at." Nijire filled the silence with small talk. She couldn't really rely on Prinz. Whenever Mirio and her were in the same room, there was just a hint of awkwardness and a bit of silence. Which meant that Nijire shipped them hard. "Oh?" Is this like that pencil challenge you had me do? Despite not even looking Mirio's way, Nijire could tell that he was blushing, just based on his vibes. Yeah, kinda. But you can do it clothed. Nijire bounced and then looked down at her own chest. Basically, all you need to do is get some bubble tea. Does it have to be bubble tea? Not really, it's called the bubble tea challenge, but I think you can do it with any drink with a straw. Nijire hummed and glanced up to the sky. What you need to do is balance the tea on your boobs and then drink from it without using your hands and… She saw someone being flown up into the air. Sorry. Here Mirio, take this. I need to go save someone. Why? Nijire. Mirio called as the boxes fell to the ground. Nijire was already off, flying towards the flailing student as they continued to go upwards, way past the point the school's no-fly zone air permitted people from going. Then they stopped, frozen in the air for what felt like a whole second. Then they screamed, arms flailing as they started to fall. I don't want to die. I don't wanna. Help. Nijire sped up, trying to get to the person before it was too late. I got you, she shouted, grabbing onto the girl's arm. Aerial rescues were hard and dangerous. Simply stopping now could dislocate both of their arms. Instead, Nijire pulled the girl into a hug, keeping her head pressed into her chest as she aligned them towards the ground. She needed to shift the momentum steadily, like going around a sharp turn really fast. She blasted her quirk, a wave of visible energy coming out from her hand as she pushed them to the side, barely swooping past the ground before they went up again. Their momentum was gone, and they were allowed to float peacefully. First day of her third year and she already saved someone. That had to be a new record. Nijire looked at the girl that was hugging her tightly and a smile spread across her face as she recognized her. Izumi. She hugged the girl tight and let out another big burst of energy, sending both of them higher into the air, but unlike before, Nijire was in complete control. Oh my god, it is you. You look so good with your hair like that. Wait, your hair was like that for like most of the first year, huh? I just can't get over it. I remember you looking like a cat that had just been blown dried. And what's this? Nijire pushed Izumi back a bit, just enough to notice that they were currently doing the monster boob mash. Oh, I guess all that milk you drank paid off. But hey, you're in UA now. And why were you going so high up? Did someone launch you? Do I need to beat someone up? She pouted and watched Izumi for a moment. 'Cause I will. Nijire-senpai. Izumi let out a light chuckle and made a very bad mistake when it came to flying, looking towards the ground. I'm happy to see you and all, but can we have this conversation on the ground? Oh right, sorry. On the way down, a large pool of blood that had covered the ground was slowly retreating back inside of the first-year teacher Vlad King. He was probably going to try and use his blood to catch and cushion Izumi's fall, but that could have still seriously hurt her. Nijire landed in front of him and Izumi stood on shaky feet for a second, with Nijire offering her some support. Vlad-sensei walked over to them, looking exceptionally paler than normal. Izumi, he slurred her name a bit. What was that? New spell, Izumi muttered with a light laugh. I probably won't be using it again anytime soon. Vlad-sensei did not look pleased. Please be careful, that might have been the closest I've ever come to losing a student. What about that time you had Mirio? I said Maita. Vlad-sensei gave her a sharp look and then sighed. Thank you for appearing, Nijire. Oh. He swooned a bit, and one of the taller students appeared to grab his shoulder. Oh. He used too much blood too quickly. Nijire waved towards the other students. Some of you need to take him to the nurse's office. Recovery girl has some of his blood stored there just in case. And she has really tasty gummies. Vlad-sensei groaned and tried to stand. You're right. Nijire, can I trust you to finish the tests? Oh, she was being given responsibility. Nope. But I'm going to do it anyway. She saluted proudly. I'll also make sure Izumi doesn't hurt herself. Izumi always did have the cutest pouts. Her first lunch at UA was every bit as impressive as it would have been at Momo's house. The Pro Hero Lunch Rush was amazing at creating the exact meal that people needed to perform at 100%. In Izumi's case, that just so happened to be a calorie-packed meal that would keep her light on her feet while using her quirk. She sat down next to two of her classmates and kept an eye out for Momo to show up and join them, Ooh, maybe Inesa too, though would it be weird for him to sit at an all-girl table? Whoa, Itsuka muttered across from her. Are you really going to eat all that? Yep. Izumi clapped her chopsticks and bounced in her seat. It helps fuel my quirk. Kind of, it's not really one-to-one, but it does help me build up my stamina so I can use my quirk more. Makes sense, Setsuna muttered with a mouthful of food. My own quirk is the same way. I can regenerate lost bits, but it's easier if I have a full belly. Still, Itsuka let her shoulders drop, one orange eyebrow staying up. Isn't that going to weigh you down for practice? Not any more than her tits. Setsuna gave a light smile and an even bigger one when she saw Itsuka's face go red. She then looked up and gave a blush of her own. Oh hey, don't mind us, just joking is all. Momo was standing there with a plate of food that rivaled Izumi's, causing Itsuka's eyes to bulge. It's fine, I'm used to those kinds of comments being said around Izumi, mostly by her. Momo gestured towards the empty seat next to Izumi. I'm Momo Yaoyorozu, Izumi's friend and a member of 1A. May I join you? Of course. Izumi scooted over, though she didn't need to, and smiled. How was your first day of class? A pervert stuck himself to my ass and got expelled. Momo spoke with the kind of tone that left Izumi wondering if she was serious. Most of the time Momo was incredibly straight-faced, but she could absolutely murder someone with sarcasm if she wanted. Seriously? Izumi asked, watching as Momo took the seat next to her. I think I actually know who you're talking about. Itsuka tapped her plate and gestured towards her hair. Short, purple balls for hair? That'd be the one, though it was less that he got expelled because he stuck himself to me, and more that he came in last during Aizawa-sensei's test. Momo let out a long sigh and started to pick at her food. Sheesh, sounds like 1A is pretty cutthroat. Setsuna extended her hand across the table. I'm Setsuna Tokage, by the way, and if you're Izumi's friend I need to know a list of all the places you two eat. Why would you need that? Itsuka asked. I'm Itsuka Kendo, by the way. It's nice to meet you. I'm so going to see if I can transfer to your class, Izumi. It seems like you have some nice classmates. Momo shook Setsuna's hand, and we mostly ate at my home or at school. Why? Well, I'm just saying, whatever they're feeding you two. Setsuna let out a light yelp as Itsuka elbowed her in the stomach. Hey! Seriously, stop talking about boobs. What? I'm just saying that they're both thick? Izumi asked cheerfully. Izumi? Momo gave another long sigh. Yeah. Setsuna snapped her fingers. Can we please not? Momo asked. Her cheeks were bright red again. At least not while we're eating. Fine. Izumi giggled and bumped into Momo lightly before she took a few big bites of her meal. Nyum, a very Nijire noise came from behind and above the table. This seat is mine. Nijire slid into the seat beside Izumi and gave her a hug. Oh hey, Momo's here too. Whoa, you filled out even more than before. How tall are you? How do you get your hair like that? I was almost excited that we were back on boobs. Setsuna gave a laugh. Hello Nijire-senpai, thanks for helping us in class. Itsuka rolled her eyes a bit, her cheeks still red from Setsuna's boob talk. I'm surprised we got through everything, but yeah, Vlad-sensei said he'd be better after lunch. Oh, don't worry, it was super duper fun, and I got to spend time with one of my favorite kuhais. Nijire squeezed Izumi tight, really tight enough that Izumi could feel Nijire's bra through their clothes. It reminded her of her old breast envy she had over Nijire, though that seemed silly now. Mostly because she was able to compete now. Oh hello, you're tall? Nijire looked up. Izumi followed her eyes and saw Inesa standing at the end of their table, his plate of food shaking violently. Because of his buzz cut, it was easy to see that his blush covered his entire head. He looked nervous and ready to explode. Hello! He shouted. I am Inesa, please don't bow while you're carrying food. Izumi gave him a bright smile. If you want to join us, you can. Setsuna doesn't bite? Yes, I do. Don't bite my friend. Izumi snapped her chopsticks at Setsuna. Thank you. Inesa gave a light bow and then took the vacant seat next to Setsuna. Excuse me. This was by far the most people she'd ever eaten lunch with. At least, in the sense that they were all her friends in some capacity. Setsuna sat across from her and had all but dragged Itsuka along for some reason. Still, Itsuka was easy to talk to and more or less kept Setsuna in check. With Inesa sitting across from Momo, they really had a full group now. Especially with Nijire here. Oh, Izumi, I totally forgot what I came here for. Nijire rapidly slapped Izumi's arm with her usual level of endless enthusiasm. It was going to take a bit of time getting used to having Nijire constantly around. The way you went flying today, right? I don't think she'd forget almost dying. Itsuka commented. You almost died? Momo shrieked, her chopsticks hitting the table with a bit too much force. What did you do? Oh, right, I developed a new spell and it kind of threw me up into the air. Like really far? Izumi chuckled and let her shoulders slump. I was trying to think of something that would help me with the long jump and then I just kind of went way up. But, she turned back to Nijire, who was looking at her with eyes that could only be described as full of rainbows and curiosity. But, I'm not in trouble, am I? Oh no, but I did have an idea. You see, instead of clubs, well, I mean a lot of people call them clubs, but like they're not really clubs because you can join a lot of them and stuff. UA has student workshops after school. And you got me thinking. I'm like the best flyer in UA and I can help people with learning how to fly. So, I got permission to hold a flying workshop after school. And you're my first member? Nijire blinked. Vlad-sensei said so. But, Izumi looked at her hand and recalled the rune she had drawn. I can only go up. And I can't really control myself. Oh, don't worry, we can totally figure all that other stuff out. Besides, UA has a room for this. It's bouncy. Nijire shrugged. Besides, I can only do it once a week. The rest of the time you can either join the aquatic rescue club for swimming, or like the gym club for gym stuff. That's where Mirio is. Who's Mirio? Someone that's sometimes naked? That didn't answer the question in the slightest. But anyways, we're going to meet up today. I still don't have any other members though, but I don't think I need too many. Nijire-senpai. Inesa raised his hand. Ooh? What is it? Nijire leaned on the table with pure excitement and curiosity on her face. Have I ever mentioned I love it when people call me senpai? Frequently, Momo muttered. Inesa coughed in his hand and then nodded. Yes, well, as you asked earlier, my quirk lets me generate wind, and I, have a habit of crashing when I try to fly with it. Do you think you'd be able to? Recruit number 2 for Nijire Hado's NUM class. Nijire bounced up and pumped both arms up into the air. I'll have both of you flying in no time. Probably. I'll go get the paperwork ready. You two just meet me at the gym later and I'll show you the way. With that, Nijire jumped and flew off, easily maneuvering through the door like a pixie. This is great. Izumi smiled right at Inesa. We get to be flying buddies. Yeah, Inesa said rigidly. He blinked for a few seconds and then jumped a bit. His eyes moved to Setsuna for a moment before he bowed a bit. I look forward to studying with you. Inesa was a funny guy, but he always had a fun energy about him. Izumi stared at her spellbook. The heavy, coarse pages were sturdy and durable enough to last, though it was unlikely that anyone would ever try to destroy her spellbook, and she did have to basically commit the runes to muscle memory before she could even think about using them, but part of her was paranoid. Especially with how Katsuki was one classroom over. She held a dozen pages between her fingers as she flipped from her first rune for up, the one that she could tie into spells, to the one she discovered today, the one that was a spell in of itself. A single rune for a single spell. The differences between the two was minuscule, only a slight alteration to her first up rune made the rune affect her. She couldn't start a spell with it, but what if she added it into an existing spell? Would it break? Well, she might break. Like, what if she used force and up, would she just explode upwards? Violently? Man, her quirk was scary. The bell rang, marking the end of her first day at UA. Well, almost. Classes were over, but it seemed like UA was even more active than her old school with the after-class activities. She needed to sign up for pool use, probably gym use, and whatever the hell Nijire's flight workshop actually was. Vlad-sensei had given her class a list of the locations and where to sign up for them, which was really nice. Most of them could be taken care of in the administration building. Izumi tapped on her spellbook and bit her lip. The rest of her class was either talking to each other or already out the door. She wondered if there was someone at UA that could help her with her quirk. There might be a pattern to her quirk that she just wasn't seeing. Vlad-sensei. Izumi half-sprinted up towards him, her skirt bouncing against her legs. She stopped right in front of the podium the teachers used and held her spellbook up so she could see it. Ah, fall girl. Vlad-sensei's two massive tusks didn't hamper his ability to smile in the slightest. I trust that Nijire spoke to you about her flying lessons? Or are you going to ask for a parachute during class? Oh well, yes, and also no, that's not what I want to ask you about. Izumi shook her head and opened her spellbook for her sensei to look at. I was wondering if there's anyone at UA that can help me with this? Vlad-sensei blinked and then pulled out a pair of glasses from the podium. May I? Izumi nodded and handed him the book. Sure. Vlad studied the page for a moment and then flipped to the next. This is your quirk, correct? Yep, those are the runes I draw to cast my spells. I don't have a lot of them, but I think I finally saw a pattern or something, though I'm not sure. Is there anyone at UA that's good with stuff like that? She asked, bouncing with nearly every single word. I think if I got some help, I could probably avoid sending myself into orbit. Actually the exact opposite. Vlad-sensei scratched his chin. When I spoke to Nijire earlier, she had a lot to say about your quirk, like how you started to swim to improve your stamina. Is there anything else you do to improve your quirk? Baila-sensei taught me how to use a broom as a weapon and how to draw my spells with it. Vlad-sensei snapped her spellbook shut and gave her a dangerous look. Broom? Yeah. It's actually part of my hero costume too. You see, the bigger I draw the runes, the more powerful the spell. And if I use something that has multiple heads like a brush or a broom, I can make a whole bunch all at once, so I can use both sides of a broom. Vlad-sensei's eyebrow did not return to its normal position. I see. Normally I'd be encouraging you to improve your quirk on your own, but given the nature of your quirk, Vlad-sensei rolled his massive shoulders and gestured towards her spellbook. I believe I know someone that could help you with this. May I show him this? Sure. Just make sure you give it back. Excellent. Now, you better hurry. Nijire is known for many things, but waiting isn't one. First Nijire teaches her how to swim, now she's teaching her how to fly. Even if she couldn't really fly. Just go up. Izumi flapped her arms as she made her way down UA's large, wide-open corridors. Technically they were designed for people that had quirks that made them larger than average, which was cool, but she had seen Nijire abuse the hallways to just zoom over the top of people. Eventually, if she found a better spell to fly than the one that Nijire has dubbed Selphus, then she'd be able to fly over the crowds too. It technically wasn't allowed, but no one seemed to bother Nijire about it. Besides, it was good training. Though she could really say the same about Nijire's flight school. Currently, Inesa was going to get a lot more out of it than her because he could actually fly without bonking his head on the ceiling every time. Just some of the time. She could still feel the bump on her head when Nijire asked her to demonstrate it. Instead, she had spent most of the time working on her balance and only falling off sometimes. With a long breath, she glanced towards the downside of having such massive hallways. Equally massive stairs. Going up wasn't that big of a problem, but both Momo and herself acknowledged that going downstairs was the exact opposite of a good time. It'll be so much nicer when she figures out how to float down. Why does the principal have to be on the top floor? She asked herself as she started her way up towards the long flight of stairs. Vlad-sensei had told her that the principal wanted to see her and wouldn't say if it was good or bad, because apparently students don't get to know when they were in trouble. Which she might be. She didn't know. Sure, she almost kind of maybe died yesterday, but that wasn't illegal or anything. Or was it? At long last, Izumi reached the principal's office and came to the realization that there was an elevator right there. Were students allowed to take the elevator? I'll just ask when I go in. She walked up and looked at the oddly normal-sized door for UA's standards. It didn't have a handle or anything, but it did have an intercom thing like what Momo's house had. She stared at it for a few seconds and then pressed the button. Mr. Principal? Vlad-sensei told me to come see you. It's me, Izumi. Oh, excellent. The voice did not match what she had pictured. Honestly, she was half expecting the principal to just be All Might but in a suit. But she had seen All Might in a suit before. In person? That was right, they had hero training today. And that was with All Might. Come on in, Izumi. I've been waiting all day for you. The door clicked and then opened on its own. Izumi took a few steps into the room and found that sitting behind the desk was what might very well be the world's largest guinea pig. He had on the dress part of a suit, making him look very professional, and a wide, cheerful smile. The shock lasted all of half a second. She really shouldn't have been surprised. 1A had a bird head dude, and her own class had someone she was pretty sure was part praying mantis. Are you the principal? She asked, all but bouncing with anticipation. I'm Nizu. The same voice that had answered the intercom came from Nizu's mouth. He bounced up onto his desk and stood proudly. And I'm the principal. Sir, Izumi began slowly. You are adorable. Thank you. My fur is also really smooth. Oh, and my paws are soft. Wanna feel? She gasped. Yes. He held out his paw towards her and she all but sprinted towards it. Her principal was adorable. She grabbed his paw and gave it a light squeeze. It really was soft. Oh, and his fur was so smooth. You're right. You must take good care of your fur. Of course I do, Prince Heinrich number 24, for short hair. Izumi gasped and grabbed onto her ponytail, swinging it over her shoulder and presenting her long silky green hair to Nizu. Momo uses number 26, for long hair on me. That's why it feels so silky smooth. Oh my yes. Nizu laughed and touched her hair. I see your friend has excellent tastes indeed. Now then, as important as hair care is, what do you say we get down to business? Oh. She took a jump back and stood straight. What did you need from me, sir? Nizu chuckled and gestured towards a chair. Izumi, relax. Right now, I'm not so much the principal as much as I am. He paused and tapped on his muzzle, a lover of puzzles, patterns, and dead languages. How was that relevant? You might be asking yourself how that's relevant for me pulling you out of history class. Holy shit, mind-reading hamster. The answer is quite simple. Nizu thumbed through a stack of paperwork he had on his desk and then pulled out her spellbook. When Sakijiro came to me with this journal of yours, I was confused. Sure, I had knowledge of your quirk and how it functions, but I didn't quite realize just how involved it was. Nizu laughed and flailed his arms out wide. Why, I do believe that your quirk isn't simply drawing random symbols for effect, but giving you access to an entire language of, Nizu giggled slightly, dare I say magic? Izumi blinked. She knew all that already, but it felt nice to have people talk about her quirk. Momo normally just hummed and played with her hair whenever Izumi was talking about her quirk. Was she self-centered? Thank you, sir. I'm glad my quirk interests you. Oh, it's done more than that, I assure you. Nizu giggled and looked at her spellbook like it was a book of great importance. The care you've put into your notes is commendable as well. You even went so far as to detail the grammar your quirk uses. Now then, if you'll humor me, I spent a bit of time not sleeping last night, and I believe that I've developed a new rune for you. Izumi gasped and clapped her hands. You have? Can we test them? I want to test them. Wait, they're not just self-Yeetus, but in other directions, are they? Because I don't think I want to know what happens when I fling myself downward like that. Nizu blinked. Self-Yeetus? It's what Nijire? Say no more. Nizu held up his hand and gave a light chuckle. And no, I don't believe I've actually created a spell based on movement, though, if I did I'd have to heavily reconsider several assumptions I made about your quirk and its grammar. Nizu clapped his hands and placed her spellbook down gently. He reached behind him and pulled out a piece of paper with a rune on it. A new rune. If I'm understanding the implications of, he paused and chuckled to himself, of self-Yeetus correctly, your runes have a different structure between personal and general use. A bit like how many languages have gendered words. For example, your rune 4-up would be the general term and part of a sentence, or what you call a spell. However, more snickering, self-Yeetus is personal, and as you have mentioned in your spellbook, happens instantly. I applied the same logic to what you describe as barrier. Nizu waved the paper again and smiled at her. Thankfully, from what I recall, your barrier is generally safe to use indoors, so why not give it a shot? Izumi nodded and took a few steps closer to carefully study the new rune. Her entire body was shaking with excitement. Getting a new rune unlocked so many different possibilities. And a personal barrier spell sounded amazing and just what she needed. She took a step back and let out a breath, willing her hands to stop shaking to prepare herself for the spell. The most important thing with her quirk was to be calm when doing it. Imperfections could cause the whole spell to simply fizzle. Honestly, her quirk was probably why she had such neat handwriting. She drew the rune slowly, repeating the pattern once, twice, and then a third time, not moving quickly enough to actually finish casting it. All the while, she could feel Nizu watching her with all the same anticipation she was. With the pattern in her mind, and the rune on the tip of her fingers, she began to cast the spell. Barrier. The rune glowed as she drew it and then activated the moment she finished. A dome formed from just above her head and fell down around her like a sheet of water. Perfectly spherical and a couple of inches taller than her, the space was a bit claustrophobic. If she drew the spell larger, would she be able to get a bigger barrier? Smaller than this would be harder. But this was more than serviceable. Outside the barrier, she saw Nizu clapping and smiling at her. His mouth was moving but the sound was distorted to the point that she couldn't hear him. So's barrier wasn't soundproof. At least not entirely. Was it airtight? Was this still barrier? She took a step forward and found that the barrier didn't move with her. That might be useful. Her hand pressed up against the sturdy transparent material that felt like a normal barrier. That might mean it was just as sturdy. She'd have to find out later. It'd probably end up spelling her doom if she tried to rely on it and the barrier failed. With a thought and a pop, the barrier vanished. It works. Thank you, Nizu-sensei. Izumi clapped her hands, then she bounced over to his desk and grabbed the paper from him. She needed to memorize this as soon as possible. She might even be able to use the spell during hero training today. My pleasure. I can't commit myself to studying your quirk as anything more than a passive hobby, but I'll be sure to call you up whenever I think I have something. Nizu gave a light chuckle and handed her back her book. Though, letting me know whenever you make a new development would be incredibly useful. I will. Izumi clutched her spellbook tight to her breast and couldn't help but let her smile take over her face. Thank you so much, Nizu-sensei. Is there anything I can do for you? Nizu was silent for a few moments, then snapped his fingers. I'd love a spot of tea. XXXX. Why do you have a broom? It's a support item. Are you a janitor? Izumi stuck her arm through one of the sleeves of her hero costume. Mostly black, with highlights of gold and a bit of red, her dress was everything a young hero needed to look like a witch. Though, if she was honest, it looked sexier in real life than she had initially thought. Mostly because she was showing what most people would consider a metric fuck ton of thigh. And if the armholes of her bodice were any bigger, she'd probably be showing off some side boob too. Upgrades for later. Yep. Izumi grabbed her broom and spun it around, barely avoiding Setsuna's head as she did so. 'Cause I'm going to clean the streets of villains. Itsuka, who was in the middle of tying her mask, snorted and had to take a moment to gather herself. Okay, but don't you think that's too sexy? Setsuna said, her head still rolling to the side. One flip and it's gonna be ass city? She felt a pressure on her and saw that one of Setsuna's hands had wandered over there. With a yelp, Izumi spun and swatted the hand away with a well-timed broom strike. Are you always so grabby? It's not my fault you're so grabbable. Setsuna's head rolled over in the middle of the room before her body wandered over and she started checking out her skin-tight suit. I bet Itsuka would be more than. A giant hand snatched Setsuna from the air and brought her right towards Itsuka. With her orange hair down, Itsuka looked like an avatar of lesbian fury that had just been woken up. I know you can regrow limbs, Setsuna, but can you regrow your head? And if you can, do you think that you'll still be the same person? I'm joking. Lighten up, Itsuka. I'm just teasing you both. The moment Itsuka let go of Setsuna's head, the girl reattached herself and then hid behind Izumi like she was some kind of barrier that would save her from Itsuka's wrath. Geez, I tease Izumi just as much and you don't see her getting violent? That's because she likes the attention. Itsuka growled and finished putting her hero costume on. She let out a sigh and looked at Izumi. But, I do agree with Setsuna, the costume is a bit revealing, isn't it? Not really. It's not like a Midnight Sensei's original hero costume or anything. Besides, you're showing off just as much skin as me, Itsuka. And Setsuna's is all skin-tight and stuff. She set her broom up in front of her and cast her first and only preparation spell, Control Object. So long as she didn't try to control something else, she'd be able to control her broom all day. For some reason, the spell vanished when she went to sleep though. And besides, she braced herself against her broom, holding it still in her mind as she lifted one leg up as high as she could. It's not like I'm naked under there. I have a leotard that's no more revealing than my old competition swimsuit. Technically, it was also waterproof and a bit on the extra durable side. But won't that get uncomfortable? Itsuka asked. Not really. Sometimes when my bras were too dirty, I'd just wear my swimsuit under my uniform back in middle school. She put both feet down and grabbed her large witch's hat and smiled at the rest of the girls. With a thought, she brought her broom into her hand and spun it around effortlessly. Oh, we all look like we're ready to kick ass, so let's go and do just that. I still don't get the broom. Itsuka gave a long sigh. Oh, don't worry. You'll see why it's awesome later.